Hello everyone, welcome back to Sketchcraft Live. I'm Rob Duenas and graphic artist Esquire, and you're... Oh man, let me start that over again, folks. I'm a little over the place today. So, welcome to Sketchcraft Live. I'm Rob Duenas, as you know, graphic artist Esquire. If you're joining in for the very first time, as you know, I typically rant about art, movie, and comic-related news stuff, but today I have something pretty special. This is the weekend Force Awakens came out. If you're in the future peeps, if you're in the future and you're looking back in time and you're checking out this cache, you're wondering when we recorded it the weekend it came out. This is the 20th of December 2015. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I'm going to play a speed draw of the recent retro gaming layout cover that I just did. The thing is, I spent so much time drawing it that even at sped up at 12 times the rate of speed, it's still like 2.5 hours long. It's long. So I thought, well, I could put up a 2.5 hour long speed vid, but I could also maybe do something with it. So what I've decided to do was mix that with my history with Star Wars. Sometimes people ask me, Rob, what inspired you? What got you going? And I can tell you that pretty much, and I'm going to prove to you without a shadow of a doubt, that old school Star Wars is pretty much how little Rob got through. But I did not do it alone, folks. So in a rare move, something that I just don't do often, actually I don't think I've ever done this on the 5 years of cast. I'm bringing on someone right now, someone I grew up with. The guy, like if I was Luke Skywalker, he was Han Solo. You know what I mean? Like if I was Chewie, he was still Han Solo. Like if I was, I mean, like he was my right hand bro, dude. He was like the dude I grew up with. And there was a long time when there was no Star Wars, and this was the guy that we met and bonded over. So I'm gonna bring him on right now. My buddy, super Star Wars fan, super talented Richard Bradley. Come on, dude.
What's going on, dude? What's up?
Hey. So Richard, what we're gonna do, Rich, is we're gonna just go through the whole history, folks. And while we do that, I'm gonna just bring up the desktop. And so I got me here, I got this, and this is a speed
I'm gonna
video.
drink coffee.
Yeah, please do. I do. We all do. So we're gonna just very carefully go through our history here. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit start now on the drawings. If you want to watch, folks, you can watch along, and we're just going to talk. So, perfect.
We took a little hiatus.
Yeah. So, alrighty. Here's the thing. Rich, you and I met in I want to say 1987, 88, right? Fourth grade, Mrs. Lamont's class.
Fourth grade.
Yeah.
Fourth grade. So
I wrote down like the numbers and like wrote backwards to figure out the years. So, and I'm only vaguely familiar with the years because when my pops passed this year, I had like all of our school photos together, and I was like, "There's little Rich, there's me, dude." And the dates, I was like, "Oh shit, 87." So we met in 87, 88. I started the fourth grade, grew up in Lakeside, California, Lindo Park, kind of a rural community. And at that time, I had just come back to live with my dad. It was a whole thing. And I didn't have a lot of friends. And you were like the new kid in class, right?
Yeah, I was new there, and it was funny. There was this big. You probably remember Thomas, that big fat redheaded guy. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, he was he was a cool nerd though. A guy, he was a bit of a jerk, but he did like Rich and I had an experience in school when it wasn't cool to like things like Star Wars and Spaceballs and shit
Or
like that.
comic books
Right.
or anything. Like we are, I like to call it original geeks. OG, baby.
Yeah, and
We are OG.
these people watched this stuff. They just didn't want to admit it. Like,
Yep.
because sometimes we would make a Star Wars reference and they go, "You fucking like Star Wars," and I'm like, "How would you know where it came from if you didn't also?"
Exactly.
So we met in the
They're
fourth. Go ahead.
they're closet wars freaks. They were all closet wars freaks. It was like back then. It was like seriously like coming out. I mean, it was almost like if you were a homosexual. I mean, I have nothing against homosexuals, and matter of fact, let's not talk about that. But anyway.
You just opening up a Starlight Pit, Rich. It was a lot like you were gay, and then you came out, and people were like, "Oh my God!" But hey, maybe I'm a little gayish too. Maybe I got a little bit of feelings for some guys. It's okay. It's all good. So, but we met in the fourth grade. It was interesting to me because I used to walk around this park, folks. Imagine there'd be this park, right? Like if you can see this park, right? There's a park here. School would
With
be
dead
here.
bodies in it.
Yeah, there'd be this park with this giant lake, and I'd have to walk around it. Nobody had the same route as me. And I remember that first day you were walking and you seemed to be walking in the same direction I usually walk home. And I was like, hey, maybe this kid, I'll have someone to talk to. So we struck it up. And you didn't know where you lived, right?
Yeah, I just literally had been there for a week, and it was like I was lost. I was lost. There's this lake, and I'm trying to walk home. My parents were supposed to come get me, but unfortunately, they're workaholics back then, and here I was in a new place and didn't know how to get to my house.
Yeah, so and I said, "Hey, do you want me to like hang out with you?" And you're like, "No, you got it. You walked up the street with me. I went to my house, and I just I just left you. Like kids, you're like, "Oh, you'll be good. No big deal." And turns out you actually lived in the opposite direction, which I
Yeah,
didn't, right?
I lived literally on the far side of town.
Right. So the next day I'm like, "Hey, you made it home." And you're like, "Yeah, it turns out I live on the opposite side of town." And I was like, "Fuck." So we only got to walk like halfway. And the reason why I bring this part of it up is that was the year Spaceballs came out.
Yep.
Yeah, so we didn't immediately start talking about Star Wars and stuff, but what did happen is Spaceballs came out, and for an R-rated for an adult comedy, that hit the schoolyard pretty hard, right? Like
Yes, it did.
we bought they have this they used to have these they probably still have them, these like scholastic book drives where you buy books. They give you this big pamphlet with pictures of books and shit, and you'd pick up all the ones you want, and your parents would be like, you're fucking crazy, I'm not buying that shit. But I would get my dad to always get me something, so I got the Star Wars novelization. A lot of people would get like Star Wars, the Spaceballs novelization. And uh and I remember like we would read that and quote Spaceballs, and so in that little bit of walk home, we'd basically talk Spaceballs all the time, and then naturally Star Wars kind of came out of that. I
Yeah.
can't say I specifically remembered the first conversation, but I guarantee it was probably around Lone Star, like the Schwartz, and then the lightsaber rings and shit. So, but that was the fourth
Uh,
grade. Hmm?
87. Let's see. I would have to say the first conversation probably came around right after. Oh, I want to think. What was it? Probably the re-release of the VHS.
Well, we'll get to that part because I actually I went and did a
Well,
lot
I'm
of,
just
yeah. Well,
well, I'm just that's when the right about then it was like okay the release, like we were talking and I think it came up. I had my dad had a laser disc player. Now that's old school DVDs. Uh, and we were talking about the trilogy, and nobody had a copy of it. It was like hard to come by, and we had laser discs, and my dad wouldn't let me use the laser disc player for fear that I would break it or take it apart. I had a habit of doing that a lot to electronics back then, and that's how the conversation with Star Wars actually got started. We were trying to find a way to get a VHS set. That's actually how the first conversation, just to get it on a copy. It's almost kind of like Fanboys.
because the way I owned Star Wars at the time was they were playing Return of the Jedi on HBO. Because HBO had like
Yeah.
three movies at the time. They would get three movies and play them all day. So it was like the Big Bird, Sesame Street movie, Return of the Jedi, and Clue. So I know those fucking three movies really well. And I've tried to delete most of the Big Bird movie because it was a waste of time. Um, but that surprisingly, those kinds of things would come up in conversation. For me, like how so the through line was like we would talk about these and we'd have good kid conversations and shit, but we weren't like actively building Star Wars models and stuff. I mean, gotta remember at the time, folks, like Star Wars at that time was something you just, oh, you like that, you remember that, or you had the toys, you go to a friend's house, you'd see the toys were still there, you go, oh, that's Star Wars toys, you play for a little while, Darth Vader, ha ha, and you'd move on. uh, about 88, 89, so the fifth grade rolls around now. I will say this: you and I had an interesting friendship because we bonded pretty quickly. I do remember that year, I think maybe the first time Star Wars, other than Spaceballs, might have constantly been coming up, and I hate to bring this up, but kids on the school ground used to call you Ewok. You had
Yes, they
bearish
did.
features, like
I was a little cherub-like.
yeah.
I
So they
was a
used to
little.
call you Ewok, and I remember thinking like, oh man, they only call me Dork, like I would kill
Like
for.
I get a cool nickname and you get dork, so
Yeah, I get
yeah.
dork or asshole, like.
No, I think from like fifth grade on through it would be till high school. I was known as the Ewok, or like my older sister when we were in junior high school would call me Ewok.
It didn't
So
help
it
that you
was
could flawlessly do like little Wicked impersonations too, right? Like
exactly, exactly,
he'd
yeah.
totally ham it up. He'd do Akieta, and we do fucking all this. We love to
Yeah.
whisper each other notes in Ewokese,
Mm,
And yeah, so yeah,
I
totally
I
fucking.
think that was the biggest thing that really put me in the I am ultimately a dork. There's nothing I can do about it. Is the fact that I think I want to say oh, there was an underground book, and I think it was '89 that it was like the basics of Huddies, and I started to learn. Try it was like almost like the yeah, it was exactly like the Trekkies who learn Klingon. It was the same thing. I was trying to learn Huddies so I could talk to like specific people without other people going, "Oh, I know what he's saying," because like only ultimate Star Wars nerds learn Huddies or roadies, or it's just something you don't do, and you are kind of like, well, you're an outcast if you speak a foreign language from a movie. So
You're like Rob, because they would hear my last name, Duenas, and they'd be like, "You speak Spanish?" I'm like, "I vaguely speak Huddies. I know a little Ewok. Dewana Wanga. Like I know that. Like, like yeah, shut, fucking nerd. So what happened is we would hang out. Now my father, God rest his soul, is a good man, was a very controlling person. So
yeah,
I was never allowed to go out to friends' houses. I never went anywhere. We met in '87. The first time I stayed the night at your house was right about the time I almost graduated high school, or right after. Like it was around that time. So, so you guys know, my father was like, Rob stays home, period. So during the summers, you and I we would go our separate ways. Um, Up until like, junior high when we would figure out we didn't live so far away as we thought we did. But when you're kids, it's like fucking forever. So, but but we would disappear. So during the summer, the fourth grade, you'd disappear, then you come back. I'm like, my friend's still here. Hey, we hook back up. And then the fifth grade summer, you'd disappear, and then you come back. We came back and met up at. So our schools were set up with K through 5, and then you would transfer to another middle school, which was 6 through 8. And that was like, if I made a left to go to my elementary school, this time I made a right, and I'm on my middle school. So it's like, same thing for you. And when we met back up in 19, yeah, I want to say 89, 90, the sixth grade, um, Batman had just come out that summer.
yep.
And that's when you and I were like, fucking Batman. And the whole school was littered with Batman shirts. Like you could not
Well,
escape it.
yeah. I think what the big thing about Batman was is well, ultimately everybody wanted to be Batman, but there was only one Batman.
Yeah. And so
To
we
this day, it's still Keaton. Keaton is still the best Batman
but that was,
ever.
it's the sixth grade, so we're pushing 11, 11, 12. And Batman was a big deal. So comic books and geeks. That was the first time I had ever seen geek stuff
Yeah, like stuff
everywhere.
we were into everywhere. Yeah. Well, you have to understand that that's like the definitive changing point for comic book uh, movie fandom. Like literally, that is the definitive changing point. 1990. With Batman, with the release of Batman, because everything else had only been Superman, and I mean, always
Superman
had
was the year I
been.
was born. We were born, so that we kind of missed out on that. So it's Batman's
Yep,
'89. A year later, we get the Turtles movie, which was a
which
huge
was
fucking deal at the
awesome.
time, right? And that's when you and I were full. We're full ninjas. We're full. Now the thing you got to remember too, folks. One of the things that you and I really, really saw eye to eye on. We weren't just fans of the characters. Matter of fact, we didn't have a lot of comics because there wasn't a comic book shop in Lakeside. You sometimes would get like with Star Wars, you'd have the novelization, which would have some of the, Alan Dean Foster wrote it about a few months
Yeah,
before the movie came out. So there would be like bits about the old Republic in there, and we would wax poetic about that time. But a lot of our talk and conversation was really about how they were made, about special effects, Industrial Light and Magic, how
Oh
Batman
yeah.
was made, what kind of materials they were using to make the suit. It was rubber. Did they make models? Could we make our own model sets? Like, I really felt like if we had access to an iPhone at the time, we'd have been making movies. You know what I mean? Immediately.
Well, I think back then, I mean, a lot of what it was how you know when Lucas did the original trilogy, he Industrial Light and Magic had a breakthrough with technology. That's the biggest thing with the trilogy. One of the biggest things, anyway, was like, you know, this technology is not in any other film. We're doing it. It's new, and we got into that. It was how is this done, and so that's what happened. The progression slowly. I mean, from movie making or being in the movies to making the movies. I mean, that was the big thing for us. It was how is this made? How is this done? Uh, like animatronics wise, how can we do this? How with little to no resources, how can we pull this off? Because Industrial Light and Magic, they did that. You know, literally, just like for example, when Mark Hamill's talking about uh, the Death Star run, the trench run. It's just like battleships glued together, pieces of, you know, how could we pull that off? And that was what we were into. That's what really got us
And we had a deep
focused on
love
it.
of the Muppets and Henson, which were intrinsically
Oh
tied
yeah,
with Star Wars. And then when Turtles came out, it was like, oh my God, Henson's back, like, and we
yep.
would talk Muppets all the fucking time, like, so
Well, Turtles was just amazing, dude. Like a lot of technology now. I mean, we have green screen and blue screen and digital CGI effects that you know. I mean, look at well, unfortunately, look at the new reboot of the Turtles. It's just CG everything, and some of it really bad, like the rubbery rhino. Uh, but back then, the practical application of physical things, like actual people inside a rubberized costume doing martial arts, and that's the thing. We were into not just that aspect, especially with turtles. I mean, the turtle thing and the that's kind of what brought us back into the force because we were really into martial arts back then, and we got into it because of turtles heavily. I mean, we were big Eastman and Laird fans long before they decided to go their own ways, but they really actually got into the mythos, and I think that's what brought us back into Star Wars so much
yeah.
because there's a wow.
Well, you would go off and so like what happened was is we would disappear during summers, but the summer around 90, 91, um, you just showed up at my house one day in the middle of the summer. I was like, wow,
Yeah, but
you walked here.
well, you can't look past the fact that basically there was a point in time where we were not allowed to hang out. I mean,
Yeah,
you
we
kind of
were
have
banned. Like, yeah,
when
we were
you
banned as a
when
bad influence because we read comic books
uh,
together and
no, it's not just comic
we
books.
ditched a
We
little
ditched
school.
school
Yeah,
for a week straight and got
we ditched a little
busted.
school.
So,
We ditched a lot of
like
school to
for
play the Turtles arcade game.
yeah,
But you would come over in the middle of the summer when my dad was gone at work and stuff, and you would be making props. Like you'd make katana props and ninja stars, and usually all wood and shit. We weren't really, But you would
of
make
course
little
we
ninja
got
stars
the
out of like
details.
screws, and they would be really well crafted actually. Like you could throw them and they'd stick into shit. And I think
Yep.
like that sort of thing turned also into making lightsabers replicas and stuff a little bit later. But I figured out like when that started exactly. And so you're going, well, Rob, you're talking about Turtles and Batman. What does that have to do? Well, this was the years where Rich and I we were like drawing all the time. We're drawing from comics. Uh, we're still watching
I was a
Star.
tracer. I was a tracer. I will admit it. I was a tracer at the time. I have to admit that. I'm sorry.
Hey, well, you're a kid. So along comes the eighth grade. All right. So
Oh boy.
this is 91, 92. And
Yep.
in the eighth grade, they did this thing every year. It was a Disneyland trip where the eighth graders
Oh
would take
yeah.
this trip to Disneyland the whole day, and it was a big thing. And for some reason, my father was like, "Fine, I'll pay for you to go." Like my stepmother at the time, she had just recently got married, and she was like, "Fucking let the kid do something," you know? Like, he gets nothing. He does all the work around here. Fucking spend the $20. So my dad said, "Cool, you can go." I went that morning. It was myself. We had two or three friends with us, and then you weren't anywhere. So guys, this is funny. So the bus lines up at 6 a.m. because it's a 2-hour trip, right? We're supposed to get there before it opens or something. It was like 5. It was like 6 a.m. These buses park outside this bank. We all meet up in the morning. It's cold for Southern California, and you were supposed to be there, and you're not there, right? Like I remember you not being there. I get on the bus. I'm like, no, Richard's not gonna be here. I had never gone, to Disneyland with my friends before. Only family, like my uncle and my cousin.
Yes,
And
and you have the leash. Your parents are like, don't touch that. Don't look at that. Don't ride that ride. Don't get in that line. Oh, I hated that.
yeah, and so, but I remember like in the bus thinking like, shit, Rich isn't gonna be here. And then this fucking Uncle Buck car like screams into the parking lot, spewing smoke everywhere. And it's like your mom at the time was driving this Bluesmobile looking thing that pulls up,
That
and you run out. Like,
that was the Buick Skylark, baby. That's a classic car. I wanted that thing.
it was
That
like
thing
the
was
Millennium
awesome.
Falcon of.
Basically, it was the Millennium Falcon. I wanted that car. By the way, I almost got it before my parents moved to Northern California. That would have been such a cool car. It didn't even have seat belts. It was made when they didn't even have seat belts. So
Yeah, I never rode it, but I used to see you guys in it like that's the Bluesmobile, like it's a cop car. And that was amazing. So you got to go on, and so you're on the bus, and we're all listening to Guns N' Roses at the time, and we're all having a good time. We get to Disneyland, and we got there before it opened, so they lined us up on the main street, which I had never done before. I mean, all the years I went, we never got there before it opened. And I'm thinking like, so what are we gonna do first? What are we gonna do first? And you were like, Star Tours,
dude, totally.
right?
That's just my thing. I had gone to Disneyland several times with my family. It was like a yearly trip. We'd go at least 2 times a year. And my uncles would drive out from Colorado, where I currently live, and we'd go every summer. We'd go, and every fall we'd go. We'd go with the whole family, and then we'd go with just my localized family at home. And every year, my parents would let me go on Star Tours. I mean, they had to be with me, but it was just like, this is the definitive. I mean, back then it was the definitive Star Wars experience. It was as close as you could get to flying in the Rebellion.
It was the only
You
way
know,
to watch Star Wars on a screen outside of your house, right? Like you could
pretty much.
that was it, and I had been on it I'd been on it before, like once a summer I'd been on so it could probably maybe 3 times before with my uncle, and I always thought it was fun. But this is the first time I ever got to do this with like my friends, and you go, well, how's it a big deal? I'm like, well, gotta remember, I'm like pushing 12, 13, and I have never gone anywhere with my friends.
Exactly. Well,
I,
back then, in '85 you have the VHS release, and so watched Star Wars, not like religiously, but we had at the point in time we had gotten a copy. I think it was Dan's copy. It was his VHS copy, and we'd go over to his house and watch it, or we'd go to your house with his VHS. And this is like 7th grade. So we were like building up. At this point, it was like we were drawing Star Wars, we were drawing comic books, we were, getting into it. They had like, different video games and things that we would play, like the Rogue Squadron series on PC.
well, we'll get into that. We'll get into that. We're jumping timeline. So we're
Well,
at Disneyland, right? I just want to paint the scene. So we're at Disneyland. We go on to start. We run. First we run. They're like, don't run. And we're like, oh, we're not running. We run. So we ran. We get on Star Tours. It's you, myself. I want to say our buddy Jesse at the time, Mike Hightower, and I think one other guy. I think was Dan there? We didn't. Dan wasn't there yet. He didn't go.
no, Dan was not
It
there
was
yet.
Chris Barber. This guy Chris, Mike's friend.
Yep.
So we get on. We see it, and it was fucking like this was the first. So I just remember like it was you and me sitting in like we sat in the back, and we were like throwing ourselves around, we were having a good time, and it was like that was the closest thing I had to seeing Star Wars with my friends in the movie theater. Like I was just blown away. We're like, we got to do that again, you know. So we run out the theater. We run out the theater. This ride. We go down, and there's this gift shop. And I had been given 20 bucks. I could buy some stuff, so I saved $5 for food, which at the time you could do. Disneyland wasn't that expensive, and I wanted to buy something Star Wars,
It
and
was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
I bought this book that had these drawings, these marker drawings of
Oh
X-wings,
yeah.
right, fighting the Death Star, and and I didn't know what it was, but I just like I saw drawings. It looked like markers and sketches. I wanted it. I bought it, and then we go back on the ride. We have a good time at Disneyland. We come home. We relax. So I look at the book on the way back, and it turns out that there was a recently released Star Wars role-playing game, pen and paper role-playing game, and this was the Death Star Battles sourcebook for that. That happened to be filled with concept art from the first film, or maybe even Jedi. Definitely the first film, which is why I bought it. And I
It
was
was
like,
some of it
I
was
didn't know what
Ralph
to do with
McQuarrie
it.
first film.
Hmm?
Some of it was Ralph McQuarrie's original artwork for Lucas's original script, and that's when we actually started looking for, well, the Starkiller stuff. That's where it all came from. So that was why that book was so important, because it actually led us, like Scooby Doo led us. It was a clue, and and it led us to go and literally find original copies of the script and the Book of Wills, which is where Yoda came from originally, and all that stuff. That's why that book was so important. But literally, you're like, it's a role playing book. What the hell do I do with it? Rich plays role playing games. He
Well,
can
you
use
went
it.
out and found the actual role-playing game.
Yes, I did. I
And
went
you
to the
brought it
mall.
back to me.
Yes, I went to the mall, and in the mall they had this West End Games. Well, they had a hobby shop
Was it
basically. They had
Game Tavern?
yeah, something like that. Game Tavern or Game Town. Game
Game
Town,
Town.
I think it was. Game Town. And they had, like, you could buy sets of Dungeons and Dragons dice, the D20 system. This is advanced D&D. And so I was like, dude,
Oh, Rich,
D6.
you there?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear
Hold on
me?
1 second.
Are we dying? What's the big debate? It might be because I'm running shit in the background, dude.
Test, test. Alright, so the internet can hear me. Let's see if Rich can hear me. Wow, my sound cut out. Give me 1 second, Rich, right?
Yep, no problem. Can you still hear me?
Hey folks, I might have to do a part two. let me see how this works. Sometimes this happens with Skype. I'm trying to figure out what the conflict is. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Test. Alright, so let's unplug it, replug it back in. We're doing it live, folks. See, I can't.
Yeah. The techno music that happens.
Alright. I don't know why I can't hear. Give me a second, guys. I will fix this.
Can you hear me now?
Give me a second, Rich.
Okay,
Hey, I only
can
happen
you
to-
hear me right now?
I can hear you. It's not you. There's some glitch between OBS and Skype that randomly occurs. Can't figure out what it is yet. So doesn't matter, because what I'll just do is I'll just edit this together seamlessly. So it's irrelevant. All right. So let me just
Tell Daddy immediately.
second.
Well, rest of the world.
Love you, Daddy.
Love you too.
All right, everybody, I'm back. Don't worry, I'm going to edit this all together. I guess I've tried not to, but there is some weird glitch that OBS and Skype are conflicting. What it does is it drops my sound and mic out, even though it's recording things. So it's awfully strange. I haven't figured it out. So when last we picked up, Rich, you were talking about Game Town.
So Game Town in the mall was like the hangout spot. So I went into Game Town, and there's books, West End, second edition Star Wars. I didn't even know there was a first edition, but
Right.
so I was like, cool. These are Star Wars books. I'm going to get these Star Wars books. And so I started buying them. I'm not going to tell you how I got the money for them, but I am going to tell you I bought them. Some of them I did get nefariously. And the 5-finger discount card was in full effect. I will just say that.
I know. We were poor kids and we acted poorly.
Oh, dude.
Well, I tell people all the time, I used to sell those sodas. Like my dad had a security company, and so when he would go through doing rounds in different buildings, they have company fridges where they have free sodas. My dad would grab one soda here, one soda there, and store them for free sodas. And then I would take said sodas to school and sell
And
them or
sell
trade,
them.
yeah, sell them or trade them for Turtles comics or, food or whatever else. So that's how, I was able to get my hand on some form of cash because I was no good at thieving. Except I could just make my dad say, my dad would go, "You're stop stealing my sodas." I'm like, "But you stole the sodas." Like, just stealing you.
You stole them. Why can I steal them?
Right. So you
Exactly.
started bringing these role-playing games to school, and that was really like I think people like. So at that point around Batman, Turtles, I figured out like we always drew before, but that's when I wanted to draw comics. Not so much Batman comics or anything else, but I wanted to draw like my own comics. Prior to that, I did write. Like I would tell people all the time, like the first thing I ever remember really writing was a sequel to Ghostbusters. I wrote my own script, Ghostbusters 2, The Return of Gozer, because I wanted more Ghostbusters, and then it became sequels to Big Trouble in Little China and sequels to Spaceballs. I just wrote sequels, like it's a kid ahead of his time, and but started drawing heavily, like wanting to do it for a living around the seventh grade. And then you got these Star Wars books, and that's where we were able to sort of really start to integrate writing stories and drawing pictures of characters and locations. And we couldn't do it like at your place at night, so we do them during the lunch break. We play during lunches briefly in the eighth grade, and then they got way more involved uh, throughout high school, right? That's
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, I had joined Jesse, our friend Jesse, he was part of a role playing group that played the second edition game, and I had 2 or 3 of the books at the time. And when I started playing in the group, that's when I started really buying up all these books or getting these books whatever way I could. And that's when we really started. I think that was freshman year. That was actually freshman year when we used to go over to Trish's and play Lucasfilm, like full throttle.
Well, that's a little bit
Used to
late. That's
play
95. But yeah, so our freshman year is 91, 92. We started playing the role-playing game, and something else occurred. So here's what happened. I lived in Lakeside. Now, so you guys know, Richard and I, our parents deemed us a bad influence on one another.
unworthy.
I could never figure because the only reason why I was able to survive through school is I had you as like you're the only person who I couldn't fight, folks. Like I was a weak kid. My father wouldn't let me do sports. I was tall though, so I was a target, and so you would like fight battles for me because I would if I got into a fight, my father would end up kicking my ass when I came home. Like nothing worked. Like I can either get my ass kicked and then get my ass kicked again. So
Yeah, and then my dad was like, if you're going to get in a fight, you better win.
right. So you'd be there to help defend me, and quite frankly, it was never a one-on-one. It was like 8 fucking assholes against myself, and you were the only one who was like, I'm joining in on that, And so but for some reason, my parents thought like you were the instigator. So what happened is when we went from the 8th grade to the ninth grade, transferred from middle school to high school. My father put me into a school on the other into another city, another side of town, really 7 miles away, Santana.
The next town over.
Yeah, Santana High School. You may have heard of it once, unfortunately. And so you went to El Capitan, which is in Lakeside. So
Yep. Cal Pie High.
so when I went to Santana, it was the first week of school. I'm in there. I'm back by myself, and I'm in this math class, and I see this girl reading a book with gold foil lettering called Star Wars. Had these paintings of Han Solo on there and the Millennium Falcon. And I was like, first off, I was like, a girl is reading Star Wars? Like, and there are Star Wars books? What is this? Like, I didn't know what this was. I'm like, what are you? What? First, who are you? And, like, oh my God, I'm totally smitten. But what are you reading? And she's like, oh, this is Dark Force Rising. This is episode 8, is what she told me. I'm like, episode 8? Which we all know not to be the truth now, but at the time, she's like, it's episode 8. They're writing the sequels to Star Wars in books. And I'm like, there's sequels to Star Wars in books? So she showed me, the Dark Force Rising. There was this one called Heir to the Empire, which I then reported back to you. Do you know there's books like on Star Wars?
Oh yeah, and I already had by that time I had already had the source books for the Thrawn trilogy.
Yeah, but
So-
I hadn't read the stories. I didn't know about them. So you would go and get your mom, or you would somehow steal, whatever. You would see, folks. Here's how this works. I find stuff. I tell Richard, find it. Richard gets it. I don't know how it gets here. We don't ask, right? Like smuggler's code. Smuggler's code. All right. Like...
Pretty much. I don't ask that question until after I've already done it. That's just that's it.
Let's see. There's nothing on the background. Oh, that's
Oh,
recording
it's
just fine.
music. It's my music. Can you shut that door, dude?
1 second. Ozam, it's recording. I don't know if you can't see it, but it's recording the way it should.
Yeah.
So let me. Oh, I forgot to hit play. So that probably helps. So sorry, folks. This didn't go as smoothly as I had planned. But it would if OBS just didn't crap out on me. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. So now I hit play. I forgot to hit play on the video. So I didn't know about this. Richard brings back the Thrawn books. So you would read them, and then you would hand them off to me to read, and then I would
Oh,
read
yeah.
them. And that felt like the first, like that really felt like reading like a Star Wars. You know, we'd had the CDs. Or I got a CD player that Christmas, and so you would go and get the actual CDs and make tape recordings for me or whatever. And so we would listen to the music. You know, we'd read the Star Wars books, and we're doing the Star Wars RPG. And then along comes this PC game called X-Wing versus TIE Fighter,
Oh yeah.
right?
Well, there was X-Wing and then there was TIE Fighter first, but yeah, X-Wing versus TIE Fighter.
But that was the
Was
first one
the-
I remember playing. Like I think maybe
Well, yeah,
TIE
that's
Fighter
the
was the
first one.
first, and then X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. Because I think TIE Fighter
Yeah.
might have been the first one that we played. You had a friend that you went and did. You went and did chores for Jeff.
Yep.
Yeah, you went and did chores. You cleaned.
Muck the stalls, take care of the horses, yeah.
Right. And so, but he had a really great computer setup, and so anytime-
166 megahertz. It
I
was a
know,
386, 166 megahertz, dude.
remember when he got Windows 95 and that was fucking amazing? Like,
Yeah. That was the greatest operating system ever.
I think 64 megabytes of RAM, So like we're like, oh my god, 64 megabytes of RAM. What are we gonna do with that? But it was like, here it is on the screen right now, going X-Wing versus here's TIE Fighter, X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. So, but that was like being able to be a pilot. So you know, you got to be able to play the game, and it was all, you know, it was very technical in a way. It was technical.
Oh, it was.
It's technical. It's kind
Dude, you could switch your shields different power, front and back. There was the technical aspect of X-Wing versus TIE Fighter was amazing. Dude, it was just like flying a plane, really. And if you had a joystick, it was that much more immersive, really.
I remember for me, to be in all honesty, I for me was not as, I was glad it was Star Wars. I was not as into it because to me it didn't feel like I was flying really fast. Like shit would fly by you quick. Whew, there's a TIE Fighter. I was like, where the fuck is it? It spent a lot, for me it felt like a lot of time like just flying around the screen trying to just come on, hold on. It's just like in the movies where they're like, stay still, TIE Fighter fucker. Gotta shoot you down. So, and I was used to the arcade game where you just pluck, you know, dun, 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 dun. You were much better at that shit than me, you know. Truly. So
That's a video game thing.
yeah, and so
It's a-
then we have a wave of games coming out, right? So we have the X-Wing T series, X-Wing TIE Fighter. Then we had the Super Nintendo games.
which were the greatest games ever.
Yeah, the Super Nintendo, Super Star Wars, Super Empire Strike Back, Super Return of the Jedi. And I remember with Super Star Wars, it was cool because they had it was like just you kept playing the game to get to the trench battle. That's how I felt. I just want to get to the trench battle. Just come on. I was like, Rich, did you get to the trench battle? And I wasn't that great at games, you know. Like I'd play them, I wasn't that great at them. So it'd be like I'd be like, my dad's gonna get home in 2 hours. You gotta fucking get to the trench battle. You know, gotta do it, man. And so you get to the trench battle, and then it was like, now we got this. There wasn't a term HD, but it was like a high definition version of the arcade game where there's this trench battle. And it felt very 3D-ish, you know, and looked better. It wasn't. I can't say it looked better than X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, but because it wasn't full 3D.
Wasn't that Star Wars on the 32X?
That's later. We'll talk about that later. The first time was Super Star Wars that we did that. There was that NES game. That game sucked. We didn't like that. The overhead X-wing shooters. We didn't really care for that one. Um, but with Super Star Wars, that was the first time they did the Mode 7 trench run. So it felt 3D-ish, and it was full
Oh yeah,
rendered, and the sound,
Mode 7.
yeah, the sound
was-
was all going and shit.
You have to admit though, back then those games had great sound.
They
They had
still
great
do. The Super Nintendo's sound chip was a Sony sound chip.
Yep.
It was phenomenal. And when they built the N64, to go off on a slight tangent, when they built the N64, they didn't have Sony components, so the sound went down in quality. Like it had no sound chip. All the sound was
Well, that
on
was
ROM.
that was Nintendo's fault, dude. They were battling for the best gaming system and muddy textures and wonderful stuff like that.
Yeah, so with Super Star Wars was great, but Super Empire Strikes Back was the if Empire
Was
Strikes
the-
Back if Empire Strikes Back
Oh,
was the shit as a movie, Super Empire Strikes Back was a fucking awesome game because that Hoth snowspeeder thing came fairly quickly. Like it didn't
Yep.
take long to get into it. And that was the first like okay, so the arcade game, the original arcade game was definitely like being in Star Wars. Star Tours was the next time I felt like I was in Star Wars, but the Super Empire Strikes Back Hoth level, Mode 7, skimming around, circling around AT-ATs. We would just replay that. You died just so you can keep replaying it, you know?
Yep,
Just
pretty much.
Yeah.
You get to the end and you go, well, I got 17 lives. I think I can spare a few. Start over.
I think eventually they had a debug code so we could just skip to that level
Yep.
and get right to it. But Super Empire was fantastic. And Super Return of the Jedi, like Jedi was like, well, I mean, there were some fun levels. Like,
It wasn't the same quality of game. It wasn't the same quality game that Empire Strikes Back. It's like they didn't put as much effort. I mean, and if you look at the three games, Super Star Wars, which was A New Hope, it was okay. It was a good game, but it wasn't as good as Empire Strikes Back. It just wasn't.
I think that the level of diversity in Empire felt more like they expanded the area versus adding to it. Like in Super Star Wars, the Cantina felt like they were just throwing shit. Like you're fighting in Jawa shit. You know what I mean? You're like Jawa
Well, like,
crawlers and
The level you got to climb up the side of a sand crawler, like that was a bitch in and of itself. Just getting to the top of it,
yeah.
like that whole level just was like a practice in frustration, like literally.
And you didn't have a lightsaber with Luke, right? Did you? Did you have the lightsaber in the first?
Oh,
not the first couple levels. You didn't get it until you
Not
met
the first
Obi-Wan.
couple levels, no. After you met, it was after the Jawa Sandcrawler level that you actually got a lightsaber. So shortly thereafter, because that whole portion of the game, you literally had to the cool thing about Star Wars was it started with the Mode 7 stuff. Like you were in the land speeder going out to find R2-D2. And it was Mode 7, and you got to shoot Jawas and shit. It was really cool. But
Yeah, the land speeder level was fun.
exactly. Any of the Mode 7 level stuff was just awesome. It was way ahead of its time.
Yeah, that was like our favorite part. Like just getting to anything with 3D and ships. Like as cool as the characters were and the monsters, like for me it was always about the ships and flying the ships, you know, and as quickly as we can get to that, the better for me. So we go, okay, that takes us up to Super Return of the Jedi, and then something crazy cool happens, right? They do this THX re-release of the original Star Wars trilogy.
Yep.
And that's sort of like when Star Wars kind of came back, you know, to an
Wasn't that was in 93, I think.
93, 94, yeah.
Yeah, Definitive Collection Star Wars.
Yeah. And they did
that
these,
was the digital remaster, I think.
yeah, they did the remaster, and it had the Bill Moyers interviews with Lucas.
Yeah, that was the 93 release.
Yeah, those were attached at the end of the movie. You can watch these bonus. This is the first time I've seen bonus materials before. I didn't have a Laserdisc, I didn't know about it. But at the end of the videotape, you know, he did these interviews with Lucas about creating. So the first one was about creating Star Wars, going to Empire, and then with Jedi talking about the future of, you know, what Star Wars might bring. And that re-release, it came out with the re-release, and then we got the Powers of the Force action figures, like, you know, within a year after that.
Yep.
So that was like, I mean, you and I must have bought that shit. Like, we each bought the widescreen. We were, like, already into widescreen, you know, full letterbox, whatever, widescreen.
You remember that cool place over by the Krikorian What the hell was the name of that shop we used to go to? That guy he was the one who helped with the Star Wars dictionary. It was just before the release of the special edition DVDs. Or, well, VHS anyway.
The
I can't
Krikorian.
remember the... You remember the Krikorian? It was right across from Rubio's. It was in El Cajon.
Yeah, the movie theater that became Regal.
Yeah.
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 There was that Star Wars place right next to it.
All
I
right,
can't
there
remember
was
the name.
there was this movie theater called the Krikorian, which I forgot. It became Regal Cinema. There was an arcade next to that, and then there was this comic
Hole
book
in the wall.
hole in the wall comic shop. And this was interesting. Good thing you brought this up. He would play. He had a VHS tape of every Star Wars toy commercial, and he would just leave them on a loop, and you would just watch these commercials, which now are on YouTube. And I remember it was fun. I was telling my partner the other day. I was like telling her, I was like, I'm sorry, my wife. Yeah. So I was telling her, I was showing her these Star Wars toy commercials. I'm like, I used to watch these in a comic book shop with my buddy Rich, and these kids would be destroying their figures, like Darth Vader, just like running their ships off the
Like
rail.
a $50 Millennium Falcon,
Just
and they're throwing it
launching
against the
them off.
freaking wall.
Yeah, just launching them off the walls. Woo! Star Wars, go! Like I got you, push! Yeah.
This is what would this is what would happen if Darth Vader really got behind Han Solo during the Death Star trench run.
So I'm imagining, right? I don't have it's not 100% clear, but I'm imagining we went to that theater probably to go see Forrest Gump at the time.
Yep.
And then we would go to the comic book shop and talk to this guy about Star Wars and the re-releases. And because, look, fact of the matter was, even at this point, and we'd already been going to Comic-Con, Star Wars was not big at Comic-Con.
No.
Like, you was non-existent. There was a couple people at the time who had replica lightsabers they would make, and you would make friends with them. It wasn't until this Star
I made a vlog actually. Look at this vlog.
I'll even let you record your own video later on, okay?
Okay.
Shit.
All right, so we're back. Whoa, Rich. Hey, folks, I don't know what's going on back there. All right, so.
What do you mean?
Oh, sorry, your daughter. I couldn't hear.
Yeah, it's my kid.
So.
I'm trying to get her to be quiet a little bit, so.
So I don't know what's causing the hiccup, folks. I've never had this problem before. I'm thinking it might be OBS just conflicting with capturing the desktop and the Skype at the same time. I'm thinking that might be the conflict. So I'm gonna not do the background streaming and see if this occurs, because I've done 2 hours of conversation before this way and it hasn't been an issue. So let's just pick it up there. Wow, this just did not go as smoothly as I had hoped.
Hooray for the magic of editing.
Well, I don't know. Not much I can do about that. I just plan on talking over a while. I think what I'll do is I'll just have to make a version where I just put all the audio over this stuff. Anyhow, so.
Well, then we better talk for 2.5 hours because it's 2.5 hours long. So.
Oh, I know, right? I'll work it out. So. All right, let's move on. So the movie theater, let's take this back up to the VHS re-release. Now, one of the things I want to get into with this era was, for me creatively, I was really big at that time. I was going to Comic-Con, we're reading Wizard magazine.
Yep.
We're drawing things like comic books. We're drawing Spawn and fan art. A lot of my friends at the time were like, "Why don't you come up with your own stuff?" And I was like, "Cause I'm fucking 14 and I don't have an original idea in my head."
That's not true, man. That's not true.
But I didn't like to come up with my own characters. But what I did like to do was, with the role-playing games, come up with I didn't like using, me, I didn't like using Luke Skywalker and preset characters. I like to create little scenarios where I would create each individual character for a person.
Yep.
Then debrief that person. Then I would design each character visually. They'd have a picture. They'd have their bio, and then I'd run you through the story. You would handle all of the statistical shit, like keeping track of dice and percentages.
Well, that's because I knew how to do all that. I had a more well-versed... I was more into the actual game itself. You were more into the art of the game and the storytelling aspect of it.
Yeah, so in a way, it's sort of like, a video game situation where you're like the programmer, and then I'd be the, right, like the designer guy, and like, but it didn't work without, I couldn't do it without you, you couldn't do it without me. But what we also did at that time was we would plan certain cutscenes. Like we'd have these scenarios where certain things had to happen, and they could play out naturally in the campaign, but I would push them into a certain result no matter what they did. And then we would do audio drama cutscenes.
Well, that's the cool thing about that. When I started actually playing with the group that I was playing with Jesse and a couple of, there was 7 of us. The guy who was running it at the time that I took it over from was Terry, this guy named Terry. He used to do audio cutscenes. And I was like, dude, this is freaking fantastic. Like, he's got literally guys fighting in the background. Like, you can hear blaster bolts and stuff. And all he was doing was literally cutting and editing audio to fit with Star Wars. And some of it wasn't even Star Wars audio. It was just different movies that fit what he was doing. And so when I took it over and you and I started doing stuff on the side outside of the group that I was running, we were doing audio stuff on our own. Yeah, and we were actually doing it better.
And so we would play, we didn't have a board, we didn't have a computer to mix this stuff. So we would have everything set up on different audio cassettes that we would play on speakers. Put up the microphone, we'd have the music playing in the background, we would record our dialogue live. If there were sound effects, if you could play a sound effect, you would. Otherwise, we would make the sound ourselves. We
did our own Foley. It was great, man.
Yeah, and we would assemble these whole things for the campaign, and that for me was that was probably my favorite thing we did. Constantly, because they would have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And then we get this feedback from our friends, and they'd always want more. And you're like, we don't have any more, man. You know how fucking hard this shit is to make?
Oh, dude, it's like, it was literally just like making a game. I mean, the effort and the hours spent just doing audio performance. I mean, I literally had to do, just like in the movies, do take after take after take to get it right. And there were... for example, I remember one campaign we were running, and it had those two, the Imperial twins. It was that one campaign you were running where I actually made Ben Starkiller before Ben Starkiller existed in any format other than what Lucas had written. And even then, he wasn't Ben Starkiller; it was just the Starkiller. And I had to do 5 different voices. And 3 of them were British Imperials, and 2 of them were twins. But they had different intonation and the same sort of dialogue, but they sounded different. And there was takes where you're like, no, dude, that's not good enough. I can remember probably doing 23 takes for one 5-minute section of a cutscene. So it wasn't like we were just oh yes, we weren't throwing this shit together with duct tape and glue. It was literally a full-on production.
Yeah, you make a good point. I think one of the things that I probably haven't stressed is you and I demanded quality.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't we made this thing. How great are we? It was no, that's not good enough.
I can remember a couple projects we did where it wasn't really quite quality. I don't know, the video we shot, Buffman.
Oh, let's not get into that shit. We knew that shit was stupid. I mean, that's something else entirely. Those are school projects that had to turn something in.
Or I don't know, what was it, Beavis and Butthead Star Wars edition?
Well, I'll get to that in a second. What he's talking about is my senior year at a film class, and I had to turn in we had to make video projects, and the only way you could get a video camera at the time is if you rented one out at school. And my father wouldn't let me do anything after school. I had to come straight home.
So I stole one. I stole
You
one.
stole one. You stole a camera. Stole a camera from a friend. I don't know. I don't know how he gets this stuff. He's like, I got a camera, and we recorded this stupid thing, you know, in my backyard just so it turned in. I hated it, and I had to play it in class, and everyone was like, "What the fuck was that?" And so, and I was like, they didn't even recognize me. He's like, I don't know, you know. So I had to do one more, and I didn't know what to do because I was like, that turned out horribly, and we need time. So at the time, my mom came back into the scene, and I was able to go to her house on a weekend. So she was okay with you coming over. And I said, I asked my teacher, if I don't have access to video cameras, I don't want to make something poor, can I do an audio drama, you know? And he looked at me, he's like, really? I'm like, it'll be full music, you know, sound effects, you know, I'd like to do an audio thing. He's like, well, what's the idea? I said, it'll be Beavis and Butthead do Star Wars. And he looked at me like, yeah, I'd love to hear what you do. You know, like he was just like, sure, bring that in. Like that, you know, what? You know, like, let's see what he does. So you and I spent an entire weekend recording that into camera. We weren't even like, let's do the 30-minute version. You know, it was like an hour. Yeah, it was the entire 2-hour version. It was a 2-hour version of Star Wars.
It was the uncut version.
I remember when the music of you finding it was Beavis Skywalker,
Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru.
Yeah, it was Uncle Owen. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. It was Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, and you time the music, the John Williams music, where he finds them, you know, dun 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 dun, and you go, oh no,
I don't know, Uncle Owen, Aunt Beru.
Yeah, it was.
Oh no.
It was just oh no. It was fucking
bad.
hilarious. Man.
It was bad. It was good, but it was bad. I mean, I think I did a good job, for my part, but there was that I don't know how well. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in the classroom.
He played that part. That was the part. He's like, look, we're not playing this whole thing, you know, because it's 2 hours. And everyone made like a 5-minute movie, and I'm like, here's a 2-hour audio drama. So again, much in the way I overproduce when I draw things, I'm like, well, here's 2 hours of fucking audio drama. Beat that.
Nobody was prepared for that. Nobody.
Right. So I mean, whatever, you know. So that takes us up to 95, and that 95, 96, which, you know, the only thing semi Star Wars at that time was Full Throttle. It was this PC game again, and they had a lot of full, you know, Star Wars references and stuff into. And
oh yeah.
But we went to Comic-Con that year in '96, and that was a strange con to go to. But I got this magazine that had this picture of Han Solo from Episode 4, and it had this Jabba the Hutt that looked very Ralph McQuarrie-ish. I thought, I was like, what? Why is Jabba the Hutt in that scene? And I opened it up, and it said they're making special editions of the 3 films for next spring, and this was a scene they're going to put Jabba back in. That cutscene where Han Solo speaks to Jabba, it's going to be CG Jabba.
I still have the copy of the Star Wars Insider with the original. I still have it. It's actually out in the garage on box.
Oh, you got that
and
still?
I've got all my Star Wars Insiders that are out in the garage.
Well, that was Star Wars Insider that was in, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It was a Star Wars Insider, and he's right there on the cover. I was just actually out there. Beginning of the summer, I was out there looking around, digging around, and I found like all the old Street Fighter Alpha books and all that stuff. It's all out there. All those Star Wars Insiders are out there. It's like, you know, it's a really cool looking CG thing when it's not moving. It's cool looking.
Well, I thought, you know, to think about that design, let's just get to the special edition. So we were blown away. Star Wars has come back to the movie theaters. So no news anywhere, you know, like we had to wait for Entertainment Tonight to mention this shit, you know, like we had access.
Knowles, though.
Well, you had access to the internet through your mom had gotten AOL. Prior to that, you had access to Prodigy, which I would go over and hang out with you on. You'd show me the chat boards, and then obviously AOL with Jeff, and your mom got AOL, so we were able to go on the AOL boards and start to talk Star Wars. About a year or two later, that's when well, that year in my school they got the full Mac lab, which we had access to the internet. So then I was able to
Yep.
go on and get all this info and stuff from. Yes, was 95 was around the time that actually 95 was when I started really using the internet because that's when I found out I found the videos to Shoshankai in November '95. That's the first time I really was using the internet. I had the videos of Mario 64 and Wave Race, and I was showing you that stuff. But when the special editions came out, you were like, yeah. So they're gonna come out in March, and that November of '96, you said the trailers were supposed to come out. That was we knew they were coming out, and I was like calling up every movie theater chain to figure out where the trailer was.
Where they were gonna play, yeah.
And no one had ever heard of this. Like everyone I called was like, I don't. You want to know what a trailer's playing with? Like I was like, yeah, I want to know what movie. And I have to get the managers to answer, and no one knew. And finally, I was told it was playing with Space Jam. And
Oh God.
so I'm like, I don't want to see Space Jam. We had just been at Comic-Con where they showed it Space Jam, and I was like, I don't want to see this fucking thing. But I wanted to see Star Wars on the big screen. Bigger than Star Tours. I wanted to see. I had seen Jedi when I was a little kid, but I hadn't seen Star Wars on the big screen. I wanted to see it. I wanted to go see this trailer on a big screen, not on TV. That's just how we would have seen it. So, for the first time I saw the trailer, you didn't go with me. I took my girlfriend at the time. I remember. But I think it was we couldn't because you were working at the casino or something like that. You had a job.
Yep.
So you couldn't
Yep.
go the first time. You went the second time. We all saw it together. And you were all bummed. You saw it without me. I was like, I couldn't wait, dude. It's Star Wars. Like I couldn't. I was like, I'll
Yeah.
make it up to you. I'll buy you a ticket to special edition. And I did. I bought like fucking 100 tickets. It's ridiculous. So I go see this thing, and I see the trailer, and I'm like, Star Wars on the big screen. And then I'm like, I'm done. Let's walk out. And my girlfriend at the time was like, wait, you're leaving? I'm like, yeah, I don't need to see this movie. So she's like, you gonna get your
I don't
money
need to
back?
see
I'm like,
this
no, I paid to see the fucking trailer. I want to get the fuck out of here. Like I don't want to see. She's
Like, this movie sucks. I just came to see the trailer, and she was fully blown away.
I gotta go tell Rich about it. Like she's like, you gotta. I want to see space. I want to see the movie. And I'm like, oh, what? No. I got suckered into a date. So I was like, I was a very impatient kid. Like, so it's a little different. So.
I could see you the whole time back then. You're probably sitting there. Your legs are shaking. You're twitching. Come on, movie in. Come on.
Yeah, I gotta go
Rich,
talk to
come
you
on.
about Star Wars. Like that was the whole time. I'm like, how? Okay, all right, Bill Murray, come on, do the fucking joke, and then Michael Jordan, and then we leave. Like we get out of here, then get back talking about some Star Wars. So I talked to you about Star Wars. I told you about it. Then we went and saw it again, probably at the Krikorian or the Regal, whatever they were calling it at the time. And then we decided we're gonna see special edition. I got a job at a toy store, and we wanted to go in costume. That was a big deal. So what had happened was that was the year we were really making Star Wars props, building lightsaber props. And you really were like doing more of that shit, like converting toys into looking like replica lightsabers.
I took a $350 vacuum cleaner carpet cleaner that my mother had paid for, and I
what are those
butchered.
called? Those are those ones the guy comes to your house to sell you for a $500 vacuum cleaner, like a Hoover, not a Hoover, a Harvey. What's the fucking? It's on the tip of my fucking tongue. So people probably already know that. It's that guy who comes over and shows you there's dirt
It was
in your
called
mouth.
a Kirby, man. How can
It's
you
a
forget
Kirby. Thank you.
Jack Kirby.
Yeah, my bad. It's Kirby. It's Kirby. It's Kirby vacuum cleaner. Yeah, you cut up the Kirby vacuum cleaner
Dude,
because
my
it was
mom,
close to close to a
best
Graflex
part-
handle. Like,
the best part about that whole adventure was the fact that I literally took the damn thing apart so she couldn't find the pieces, and I put them all over the garage. It was like a fucking Easter egg hunt. And there was all these pieces of this vacuum. And so one day she just gets a wild hair and says, I'm going to clean the couches and carpet in the den. And I'm like, oh shit.
The day of
You know,
reckoning has appeared, right?
Yeah, exactly. So she starts finding pieces of the vacuum, but she can't find the tubing, the
It's
metal.
almost like a droid murder site, right? Like where,
Right.
where she's like Sherlock and she's forensically putting back together the pieces of, you know.
So she gets this vacuum all put back together, and she can't find like parts of it, just like really important parts, like, you know, switches and shit. And like I literally, like, with a Dremel and, you know, super glue, and I made lightsabers. I made them, and they were, you know, I mean, I took Christmas lights and shit and made them look like they were glowing or whatever. And my dad wasn't, well, you remember my dad wasn't, he was still an engineer, but at the time he had like metal lathes and shit at work. And so I went and made all these parts. And so here I am standing in the garage trying to get my hands on another piece of tubing, and my mom catches me. And so that was the day of, dude, she told my dad, he beat me senseless for that shit, dude. A $350 vacuum cleaner. She was so mad. That was great, though.
Which
it was
in
worth
today's money is closer to like an $800 vacuum cleaner.
Yeah,
so,
pretty much.
So,
But that was worth it, though. It was worth it because it was. that
See
was
how we
something
rational?
I
That's how our love for Star Wars. You know, our love for Star Wars
Well,
is like it's worth.
That's the truth.
it's worth
It was worth the beating. It was worth it.
It was not like we didn't go into it knowing there was a chance. I knew there was a chance of you getting beat. I wasn't getting beat. Like, I was like,
It wasn't your vacuum
let the
cleaner.
droid, you know, let Richard take that beating. You know, like.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine if you had done that? What your dad would do to you? He'd come unchloroform.
Well, my father had a different way of just, you know, yeah, there'd be, you know, some. See, he would get me with my sleep. Like my dad would drag me out of bed in my sleep and then make me do chores. Like, so it was slightly different for me, you know. It would never end, you know, sort of thing. So our parents came from another era, you know. By the way, folks, you know, like
when it was legal to beat your children.
when it was recommended, you know, like when you were in the store. I remember when I was the tiniest little kid, they still had Star Wars toys in the store. I wanted an X-wing, and my mom said no, and I threw a tantrum. And everyone was like, "Just smack the kid." Like I remember a woman say, "Just fucking smack him." And my mom smacked me. Hey, go. That's what you do. Like
Like,
you know?
back then, it was, we recommend you give him physical discipline. Nowadays, it's like, here, take these Vicodin.
So I don't know. You know what I mean? So we decided we were gonna go.
Prozac!
So let's hold on. So we decided we're gonna go to the special editions in costume. So, you know, we built our own custom sabers. I kind of mocked mine up with foil tape. I had this Anakin lightsaber toy that had come out, and I worked at a hobby store, so I was able to get all this model airplane parts and the chrome tape, you know, they film, and you would go and do it all perfectly because I'd get bubbles and shit. I couldn't do it very well, and it would look, you know, for at the time that was the best we could do, and it looked pretty good. And you'd build me like I wanted to go as Anakin, you know, dark Sith dude, and then you built me this giant Spawn-like fucking Anakin cape, and you know we had the boots and the whole bit, and you think you had more of like a snub Jedi looking thing, and so it's the special editions come up, and I wanted to do this in style. Like I wanted to be a big party. I must have bought about 20. I think I bought 20 tickets. There's 20 tickets. There was a theater here. It was this wide Cinerama screen. It was one of the few theaters in America that showed the original Star Wars when it first came out.
Yep.
37 screens.
Yep.
It was in San Diego. Was one of them. It was at this place. It no longer exists now.
Oh, did they tear it down?
Yeah, they tore it down around.
Oh, man.
It's a
wow.
hotel
That's
golf
kind of
course thing now.
sad.
It's a golf course. The Empire One.
What?
Yeah, it's a golf course. So
Wow.
I get this, and I'm like, okay, all my 20 friends, Richard, invite your friends, you know, all our friends are gonna go, and I remember at the last second I wanted a Star Wars T-shirt. Asked my girlfriend to pick me one up, and then you were like, I need a Star Wars T-shirt, and I'm like, fuck, grab Rich one too, and so she got me this one. The last two Star Wars T-shirts, it was a Calvin Klein thing for me, and then I got this Max Rebo band. Now, in fairness, mine was the classy shirt, and yours was pretty fucking god awful.
It was the nerdy. No, it wasn't god awful.
But it was
awesome.
nerdy, right? It was Max Rebo's band, full color, It had Sice Noodles with the big lips. Yeah.
On the front and on the back, what did it have? That
And you
was the
were
best part of that fucking shirt, dude.
and you were like, "Oh, can I have the nice one?" You know, and I'm like, "No, I want to wear the nice one." You're like, "Well, I don't mind this one." But I just remember it was like, who's gonna get the nice shirt? And I think I was like, "Well, I did spend like $300. Can I wear the nice shirt?" So you were nice enough to be like, "Yeah, that's true. All right," you know, you know. But that was a great time. We went down there. We had these giant bass subwoofers that you had built. These custom big fucking speakers. Had my
They were
stereo
12
set.
inch,
Yeah, 12 inch.
12-inch subwoofers.
We had it down there. We set the whole thing up hours in advance, around noon. People weren't lined up the day in advance for this, but we got there around noon, 8 or 9 hours before the movie's supposed to start. Blasting music, which the theater people had never seen before. The crowd started to form.
They didn't know how to handle us.
The news came down. My dad was like, he'd never seen me like, wow, Rob's smiling. Like, this is amazing. My kid likes, like, my kid is
He's happy?
he's
How did he do
alive. He'd never seen me so happy before. And they had the Star Wars arcade game in there we could go play. And, all the stupid commemorative cups. And we went and saw, and this is the first time I saw Star Wars. We had all seen Star Wars in a theater packed full of people. There was lightsaber battles up and down the aisleways. There was, and I had never seen it with a group of people in that, like when Luke said things like, "Oh, I wanted to go get, power. I want to go to Tosh Station to get power."
Oh,
I
he wants
never-
to go Todd.
I never really thought that was a big thing, like honestly. And
Oh,
everyone,
God, dude.
everyone was like,
That crowd was very interactive. It was great, man. There were so many people in costume. There was Jedis and Darth Vaders and Stormtroopers, Boba Fett's, Chewbacca's. That was a really interactive crowd. It was great.
yeah, everyone was like, "Ah," I was like,
And when Vader first came on screen, they were like, "Boo, hiss!" Everybody was hissing. Oh, the villain,
yeah, and
It was great.
no one complained about the special edition editions at the time. At least in the theater, no one complained. I didn't hear one person go, "That sucks," I didn't hear that. But let's talk about some of those special edition for the first one, the first changes. So one of the bigger things at the time was, let's talk about Jabba, right? So the design of Jabba. Now, people say that CG was really bad at the time, and they've since changed it to to the Jedi model, more along the line of the Jedi model. For me, he definitely looked too young compared to how old he would look in Jedi. But to me, it looked like a Ralph McQuarrie drawing.
Yeah.
So I was like, that way I was like, well, it looks more like the Ralph McQuarrie art, so I didn't have any problem with that at the time. But I get the complaint in hindsight. I think the other big thing that is an Easter egg is they put Dash Rendar ship in there. If you don't know what Dash Rendar was, he was there was a game
Shadows of the Empire.
that prior Christmas, Shadows of the Empire for the Nintendo 64 came out. Might I add, at $99, because that's what my girlfriend paid for it for me, because she got mad for Christmas, and that had the Hoth battle, level 1. Like, they got smart. They put those spaceship battles right at the fucking beginning, So we played the shit out of that game. And there's that Dash Rendar ship in the Mos Eisley in the background when they roll in. But was there what was the best change that what did you think worked about that? What do you think didn't work, Rich, about the first one?
About special edition?
New Hope specifically.
Honestly, I think and this is just personal preference because I was so big into X-Wing and TIE Fighter and then X-Wing TIE Fighter. I joined a squadron and we used to get in these fur balls. I think the best part for me was the changes to Yavin 4 and the actual Death Star attack. That was the best changes. That was the definitive, like, holy crap, dude, this is so awesome. Because that scene actually had volume, it had depth, it had all of the things that I felt when I would watch it on VHS. Like, dude, why aren't there more ships in this scene? Why does it not feel right? And so special edition, they took that scene and they made it alive. And that for me, that was really, in the whole movie, A New Hope, that was probably the best part. I really did enjoy the Jabba stuff, but again, like, he looked too young. He didn't look right. It didn't match. So
for me, it was the youth less than the design. You know, like he just looked too young.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like he didn't age that
No,
much in two
I
movies.
agree with
you know?
that.
Knowing
Yeah.
how
Well, I
old,
don't know.
well, knowing how old Huds are supposed to live, I was like, well, that he probably should be older. You know.
Well, then, like you could look at it like that, or you could define, or you could use the excuse that he was basically indulging himself, and that's why he looked young then, and then he changed so much. But
There's
that's
always a
just
way.
like
There's always a way for us to rationalize how it happened, right?
exactly. But yeah, like that scene with all the ships was my definitive. Uh, like there's a scene when there's X-wings landing on Yavin 4. And you, instead of just being this small, thing on a blue screen in the background, what they did was they brought it forward and they made a model, and there it was. You could see it landing. It was like stuff that, little things like that, when they brought them to the forefront and made it look like you were really there, or like you could really feel what they were doing. All those scenes that they had with the ships and stuff, for me, that was really a big.
Yeah, I like the way
big,
they expanded Mos Eisley. That for me was my favorite part. Like the expansion of Mos Eisley felt like a spaceport.
Yeah,
You
it
know?
felt big.
Yeah, it felt a little bit bigger, and I mean, yeah, I liked that at the time. Looking at it now, I still like that they expanded that a little bit more. What I didn't get at the time, the thing that I didn't get, and we had talked about this, and we were bummed about it, was that they obviously did not re-rotoscope the lightsabers.
I was gonna say the rotoscoping.
Yeah.
Oh my god, dude!
Yeah, I mean that was the
Like
thing. We were like, how come they didn't, like rotoscope
in that
Ben's
scene.
saber when Ben's doing like the,
Yeah.
he's deflecting Vader's, thing. You can still see the rod. Like they didn't actually fix that until the 2004 edition. So I couldn't figure out why that seemed to be a bigger. And his blade was still white instead of bluish.
Well, like on the scene where old Ben's, trying to get Luke in touch with the Force, and they're on the Millennium Falcon and they're heading towards Alderaan, and he's like, block the laser blast from this remote. Well, that whole scene was it's like they didn't even finish it. Like literally, it looks like they started, but they never finished the rotoscope on it because they're literally at the base, like right where the, pardon the nerdism, but right where the emitter is for that lightsaber, it was blocky, and it didn't look complete. It looked like they just went into Photoshop and went,
And it was green.
Yeah, and it was. Well, that was fade. That's because that blue, that particular color blue, when it fades on film, it looks green.
Right.
And that's something that they didn't fix either. They didn't fix the color of that, but they did actually go back into it when they re-released Special Edition on the DVDs.
Yeah, eventually in 2004. So that was the first movie. We had a great time, So people know, side story, someone stole my Spawn toy that day. That was bad. Richard's buddy, he invited the one guy you invited I'd never met before stole my Spawn toy. Like, it was a bit of a bummer. I remember that day. But we had a great time. And 30 days later, we were right back at the same theater for The Empire Strikes Back. This time I did not buy 20 tickets.
No, I bought my own tickets that time.
Yeah, I was like, everyone needs to buy their own fucking ticket, and that dude who stole my Spawn toy ain't come back. Like,
no, I don't. His name was James. I know his last name.
No, it's not. It's not go there. But so we go back now. I thought
I still have contact with that guy actually. I'm through Facebook, obviously, but yeah, we still talk about that.
Well, I bought it for my younger brother. That's the damn side. He's really sold it for my brother. Anyway, I want to get into it. So we get to the Empire. Now, when they had a New Hope, they had the Star Wars sit-down arcade game in there, the 1980s arcade game. This time, they had a stand-up. It looked just like the arcade game, except it said Empire Strikes Back. And it was a whole new Empire Strikes Back game in the vein of the original Vectrex Star Wars arcade game. I had never seen this arcade game before in my entire life. Like, I remember going in there because they would let you go buy concessions. They didn't care if you bought concessions. When you're out there waiting, buy Cokes from us. We don't care, So we go in there, buy concessions, and they had this game in there, and you and I were like, there's an Empire game? Like, I never, you fly the Millennium Falcon against Vector AT-ATs, and there's an asteroid level, and they got the Hoth thing. I put it in the retro piece on the right-hand side. Rich, had you ever really? I mean, I think at the time you said no, but thinking back, had you ever seen that in the arcades before then? Like,
No,
because I did
no.
research on that on this cover, and it turns out that
Honestly, I think that was probably one of the only places. Well, I think that was at Disneyland as well.
I never saw it. We always went to Starcade. Disneyland had this arcade called Starcade. It's no longer there, where they'd have all these video games. I had never seen that there. So I looked it up when I was doing this retro cover. So the arcade game comes out 83, 85. Yeah, it comes out in 83, 82, 83. The original Star Wars arcade game. The Jedi game comes out 80, 83, 85, and that was isometric, full color pixels. Wasn't even the same kind of thing. The Empire game came out in 87, 86, 87. So arcades were like long gone by then, for us.
Yeah,
Other than Chuck E. Cheese, Chuck E. Cheese wasn't
Wonderland, dude.
but Wonderland wasn't until the mid
5.
'90s. Yeah, it wasn't until 10 years later almost. So, this was the first time, but we played the shit out of that Empire Strikes Back arcade game, and it is pretty cool. I remember you had to collect the words Jedi, right? Like you had to down ships or something, and you'd spell the word Jedi, and Vader would talk some shit. But it was cool. You had an AT-AT level, you had an asteroid level. I think that's it. I just kind of repeated those two things. One was for the Falcon, and one was the little Hoth speeder. So we go see Empire, and they had these changes in the Empire Special Edition. Everyone knows was the Wampa, which we thought that was cool, right? The Wampa.
The Wampa was awesome. That change actually was one of the better ones. I didn't, in Empire, there wasn't. I mean, visually they cleaned it up, but not as much. Well, we won't even talk about that.
Well, they had talked about. Okay, so if everyone's ever watched that version of Empire, even now up until it's crazy. If you watch the snow speeders when they fly around, they're transparent. You can see through the snow speeder. You can see through it. The blacks are not solid. They're transparent, the way they matted it back in the day. Because they used to use light to blow through the mats, and they just weren't opaque black. So you could see through. And so the big thing that we were like, oh, they're going to fix that, right? They're going to fix that for the special editions. We'll have, solid snow speeders. No. No.
They didn't. They just... No, they bypassed it.
So much
I
so...
mean,
go ahead, sorry.
Well, they darkened it.
Yeah, they
that was
darkened
it.
the movie got a whole blue tint. That's what they did. They just darkened it blue, so you're like, oh, I guess I can. And then, you could
Well,
still
they
see
were
it.
less. The opacity was less so, but you could still see through it.
Versus actually rotoscoping the whole thing and tracking it. And so much so that they when they re-released the Empire Special Editions in 2004 on DVD, they were like, oh, we fixed that. And they're showing you the comparison. They didn't fix it. Like if you look at the comparison, you can still see right through it, guys. Like it's a weird lie. Like they tell you that we fixed it. They didn't fix it. Someone's fixing it right now. It's almost done. We'll get to that later. But so the Empire Special Editions come out. What was the part you liked the most out of that, Rich, and what was the part you didn't care for?
Oh. Well,
Thing, man.
I do have to say I like the Wampa, but honestly, the one thing they did as compared to A New Hope was they did go back in and fix all the lightsabers.
Again.
And Are we dead? Are we dead?
All right, folks. So here's the thing. I stream for 4 or 5 hours at a time. right? And I don't have one problem with the mic dropping out ever. So we're learning a good lesson. I think right now it's OBS conflicting with showing the Skype screen. So just bear with me. I'll make a completely unedited version of this whole conversation later. You know, I'll string it all together. All these things are being saved. So just bear with me while I do this. I'm learning the limitations of this software. I think, because I show Richard's little screen up there, right up here, that's what's causing. So give me 1 second. Richard's taking a quick break. Skype me when back. He has to use the tinkle. So I first encountered this error 2 nights. It was the last time I was on with Wesley. It just cut out for some reason. I didn't understand. That was the first time I put Wesley on the box right up here. I put the little Skype box. So I have been tinkering with a program called Manicam that's supposed to be able to do this easier. I thought OBS would handle it just fine. But what it's doing is it's just killing my mic. So somehow the Skype and the OBS aren't getting along. No clue why. So I didn't think it'd be an issue here. I just done, you know, I do 4 hours of streaming every day, not one issue. So Richard will hit me back up, and like I said, I'll just make an unedited, you know, I'll just edit. Sorry, I'll make an edited version where this stuff all strings up, you know, this week, and it'll be there. So if anyone has any questions, now's the time to ask them. Otherwise, this I had planned on showing the streaming of the drawing and talking about Star Wars, and it was going to be fun. It's going to be really good, and it seemed to be working really well until everything crashes. So I'll have them. So I think it's the Skype interaction with OBS. So
Probably.
so I put you up on the little screen up there, and it's the only time I've incurred this problem. So I've taken it off and I unplugged the headset and redid everything. So there we go. So like I said, folks, I'll edit this all together. Sadly, I'll take these live stream versions down and I'll sync it all back up. So for all those who are still hanging out, great. But if not, you left, whatever. Where was I? So Empire. Empire Special Edition.
Oh,
What did you
Empire
not like?
Special Edition. What I didn't like was, one, they didn't go through and fix any of the matting, any of it. Like throughout the whole film, you can see it. There's a when Vader's standing on the bridge of a Star Destroyer, the asteroid scene. A lot of the matting in that, and the one big thing, and you can actually see this in that scene with the TIE fighters, and it's in A New Hope Special Edition. They went through, and when they did the blue on the whole movie, they didn't go through and fix the TIE fighters. There's a scene when it's the asteroid scene when they're being chased by TIE fighters. There's this white box, and you can see where the old color, they didn't blend them, so you have kind of this grayish box around the TIE fighters, and it's like they went to the computer and went, maybe they won't notice that. Yeah, the matte boxes are horrible in that scene. And it's the same thing with the, well, it didn't happen as much in Return of the Jedi, but in A New Hope it was really bad on the Death Star scene. The scenes that they didn't go through and do digitally, all the matting for that scene is the same thing. And so that's my biggest problem, is all the space scenes, you can actually tell around the Star Destroyers and around all the ships, the matting was just horribly done.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that bothered me the most was Luke screaming when he fell off. You know what I mean? I like the silent fall.
Yeah.
I don't. If he chose to fall, why would he go? You know, like that kind of nonsense. So that bothers the shit out of me. I think it became apparent to us at the time that these weren't fixing every problem. or
No.
technically with the movies. These were just fixing some problems, you know. So we were like, well, maybe they'll just go back and fix everything eventually, you know. Um,
We hoped. We hoped.
that was our hope. So okay, so we go from Empire to Jedi's a month later. So this is a 3-month period. There's a lot of Star Wars, man. So every month, there's a new movie. We went and saw Jedi at a different theater because it wasn't, for some reason, it wasn't playing at that Cinerama that weekend. There was a,
No, it
yeah,
wasn't.
yeah, it was weird. They weren't playing Jedi at that theater, which probably signaled why that theater wasn't going to last much longer. So we had to go see it at a smaller theater, which we did. We saw it. Did not like the new musical number. I didn't hate it. I think at the time we were like, oh, that's kind of fun, but man, it just felt right out of place in that film, man. Like it was like, well, it didn't ruin the movie, but it's like, well, everything's bright and colorful, and now it's dingy again, you know. So I don't have much
Well,
to say about Jedi.
I enjoyed. I really actually liked that new musical number, but I didn't. When I watch Special Edition now, it's like really apparent that they really didn't put any effort into it.
Yeah, at the time we weren't like, that's bullshit. We were like, all right, you know what I mean? That's kind of fun and new, you know. But yeah, looking back at it now, you're like, oh, that just doesn't even need it, you know.
Well, yeah, and then they have Boba Fett like hitting on chicks in there, trying to give him something. Because honestly, I still don't get the hype behind Boba Fett. I really don't.
Action figures.
After the books, after the books, when they went in the background for Boba Fett, he was a cool character, but he just had some, put Solo in the cargo hold.
He has a cool looking helmet and a jetpack.
Well,
that's what's cool.
His armor is really cool.
Yeah, that's what works.
His armor is really.
Yeah, it's got a cool look.
It went from, I can't, like the put Captain Solo in the cargo hold. It went from really cool gruff Boba Fett to just, oh my god, what the hell is this?
Attack of the Clones. So but I remember us really liking that we finally got to see Coruscant, which.
Oh yeah,
having read the shit out of those Zahn books, you know what I mean? Like that was a big deal. Like we actually saw a scene from Coruscant.
Yep.
And I remember walking out the theater, and you and I were looking at one another, and we were like, wow, so the next time we see Star Wars, it's going to be Episode 1. Because we knew they were making it. It was like, that's going to be fucking amazing, like...
We're going to get to see more of Coruscant.
Yeah, the next time, this is going to be amazing, and it's like 2 years away, and oh, I can't wait, and wonder what we'll be doing. What were we doing? So this is what, June of 97, and let me look at my notes. And so from then on out, it's just making role-playing games and trying to figure out how to be a man. And eventually, you and I joined the army separately.
Yep.
Separately, we joined the army in fall of '98. I was actually in another state at the time, and you were still in San Diego. And you actually had a really good job. And then you found out I took the shitty job as a tanker and changed your MOS to mine, which that was like.
Well, no. See, that's not how it went. Like, I took the Azra, and they're like, "What job do you want?" And Jesse had been a tanker, and it was like.
So
he said something about
one of the guys that we went to Disneyland with, when we were talking about Disneyland, his name was Jesse. This guy ended up marrying my cousin because I hooked him up on a date and they got together, they got married. He ended up joining the army, became a tanker, probably because he wasn't that smart. Now, I was living with my cousin at the time up in another state, Montana, trying to figure out my life. I was confused. I want to be an artist, didn't know how to do it. Need to get away from things. And she decided that, they were getting married, and since he joined the army, she was going to move to Kentucky. So I was like, well, I knew at some point, we always figured we were going to have to join the military. It was always a conversation, like, we're probably going to have to do that. When do we do it? And I figured, well, I'll join. Let me see what it's like out there. So I helped move her to Kentucky, saw the base, whatever, Fort Knox. And I figured, well, if I join and become a tanker, at least I'll have family near me while I'm in basic. So if I get a weekend off, I could see family, right? Like, if they say you're going to miss your family, then you could see your family. Turns out I never once saw her. I didn't miss my family at all. But but I was like, and I thought it would be fun I thought it would be fun to do something that wasn't behind a desk. This is the mind of an 8-year-old thinking, right? I'll figure I'll be an artist all my life. I'll be behind a desk. I want to go live the adventure of being a tanker. So could have had a lot of great opportunities. You know, I scored really well in the ASVAB. Not a dumb kid. Took one a really dumb job, and then somehow talked you into doing it. And we ended up in basic
Actually,
training together. I just remember
uh,
calling you, and you said you were going to become a helicopter pilot.
no, what happened was you went to Montana, and I called you one day and said, "Hey, dude, I got something I need to tell you. I'm joining the Army." And you're like, "No shit, I'm joining the Army too."
Yeah, I joined the Army too. We're twins.
And I'm like, "No way, dude! Like we're connected at the fucking brain, long distance." And it was like, telepathically told you, join the military. And so I was going to do piloting because I wanted to fly. But then you said, "Yeah, I'm gonna be in 19 kilo," and I was like, "You're gonna be a tanker like Jesse?" And you're like, "Yeah, it has a $10,000 signing bonus." And I was like, "That's what I'm doing," because I was like, I had never had $10,000 in my entire freaking life. So I was like,
we can get a computer. We can start making animation. We can make movies.
Yeah.
That was like.
well, and that's when I was really big into sculpting. And you're like, "Dude, there's like these tools that you can scan your sculpting into the computer, and we can really, get into this shit." So I was like, "Cool, I'll take my $10,000, and that's what I'll do." And so I switched my MOS to 19 kilo, and that's we actually ended up in basic training. I was in the NATO platoon, like with guys from Micronesia, like hello.
We were
I
in
didn't even know
different
where Micronesia
platoons.
was.
We shipped from different states. Ended up in different platoons, same company, same floor. So your bay was right
Yep.
across from mine. So
Yep.
and everyone we didn't tell people right away we knew one another. It wasn't that we were hiding. It's just everyone's kind of on their own, and it was nice to know, hey, there's my buddy. Man, they're getting smoked today, and vice versa, oh, Rob's company's not doing so well today, rough day for them. But I remember we were in basic training, and it was the first time we were doing live fire exercises, and we're
Yeah.
wearing the camo gear, and you put it on, you're like, I'm a rebel pilot, I'm a rebel fighter, Jedi, and you look just like the dudes on Jedi, I got the helmet, you started doing the Ewok sounds and shit, I get that.
We were out in the woods doing like, "Oh, here, we're gonna drop you off. Figure out how to get back here." And then we're like, "Do do 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 do."
Yeah, we were singing Star Wars songs
running through the fucking woods, and they're like, "Bradley, shut up." I'm like, "I can't help it. I'm a rebel. I'm a rebel. I'm a rebel. I'm really here." And yeah, that didn't go over too well.
I remember one of the first times we were in the motor pool using tanks. Or was in there and there's something going on there. Like, what is it? And I was like, I think it's the hydro spanner. And my drill sergeant's like, what the fuck is a hydro spanner? And then the guy next to him started laughing. You know it. You know what a hydro spanner is. So, yeah, that was good.
Yeah,
times,
my basic training didn't go that fun. Mine was bad, but
yeah, okay, it's not getting that. But basic training was an interesting situation. So we're basically we joined the Empire, and it's 500 people. The company was huge, and at the end they give you your service papers where you're going to be stationed at. And you had been injured. You had this knee surgery, so you had to go in for your knee surgery. So you had delay wherever you were shipping was delay. I got Germany. I think you knew you were getting Germany, but you didn't travel with me. You traveled after me. So
no, I was a week behind. A week behind. And it wasn't knee surgery. What it was is I slipped in the ice and got a rock lodged in my knee.
Okay.
And your dad was like, "Here, drink this whiskey. I'll take the rock out." And then it got inflamed, and I had to go in there to actually remove the nasty pus sac that was in there. It was great.
Yeah. So I figured at that point, well, all right to Rich. You know what I mean? I'm gonna move on with life. So I get to my duty station. That's an experience to arrive at someplace in the middle of the night in the winter, and it's all military. It was very, Cold War-ish. And I remember my second day in, I'm sitting there looking at my room, and I'm kind of putting up some Star Wars posters, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, how I'm gonna spend this bonus money. I'm gonna get a computer, and someone knocks on my door, and they go, "You know Bradley?" And I'm like, "Do I know a Bradley?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, Fort Knox? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, I know Bradley. Yeah, he's in our company. I need you to, no, put him in this room. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. And you shut up. I was like, we're here. Like, and it was amazing, dude. Like, I could not believe the weird. I mean, like, people don't understand. Like, out of 500 people, no one in my platoon made it where I was at. Nobody. It was just me. And we had one other guy from yours, McKinnon, was in another company on the other side of Post. He was there, and then all of a sudden you're there. Like, I don't know how that worked out. You know what I mean? Like, the sheer. What I wonder what. Never tell me the odds, kid. But like that was really. You know, when you like Star Wars, it's Lucas is doing it. Like the Force, man. And
They must be watching us. They're watching my life. They are like controlling where I'm going.
Well, I will say this, and I did forget to put this in my notes. Right before I joined the military, I had sort of a spiritual, I had an awakening myself, and I think you remember it. It was October of '97. I bought this book called The Power of Myth, which was an interview that Bill Moyers did with Joseph Campbell, the guy who wrote A Hero with a Thousand Faces and heavily influenced Lucas.
It's like a really good book, by the way. Good book.
Yeah, great interview, and he talks about at the time how Star Wars is a big influence, and you know, features cinema and religion, and all these things. And it shaked my foundations. Like it was like that catalyst I needed to go out into the world and become a man and whatever, you know, face the cave, you know, the bear. And so I don't know. Like to me, all these things were happening within like a year of one another. You know, the book, the army, you, me, basic training, graduating, going to Germany. Now we're together. I'm like, well, you know, if at least we fight in a war. I remember the first thing I said was two things. One, if we fight in a war, at least we'll be there together. And two, episode one, like we're like we get to see it together. Like this is gonna be great. Like that Star Wars brings the cast together. So that takes us up until about I want to say May. So pushing into May because Star Wars was released into Germany till a month after it came out. We didn't actually get till June, but in May we were down in Hoensfeld, this training range, and my back finally gave out. It's like when I started to go through my whole thing. I had this back injury that it cropped up in basic training and came back and really fucked with me, and I refused to quit, so it was just a big mind fuck for 2 years for me. But I was stationed in this Red Cross unit, and my job was to go wake people up in the middle of the night when your family died, but I couldn't tell you. Like it was like no one wanted to do that job. They're like, send a private. Like, you know, you can't. What's wrong? I can't say why I'm getting you up at 2 in the morning, but come with me. And the novelization for episode 1 came out. They had it at the bookstore, the Terry Brooks novelization. So I grabbed it, grabbed the soundtrack for Phantom Menace, and read. My first experience with the Phantom Menace was reading the novelization and listening to the soundtrack. And I remember I would see you in the PX when you'd come in for a couple days and go back out during that training session. And I'd be like, the fucking book's amazing. You know, I think at the time you were against me reading the book before seeing the movie. I want to say.
I was severely against it.
And I was
well,
like,
you know, back then it was like, yeah. No, I was totally against it. But at the same time, I was literally absorbing every bit of prequel information, so I was just as guilty of jumping the gun on the movie. And I mean, I knew everything. I was like learning everything I could, like who was playing what part, you know, where different scenes were, just every detail I could possibly absorb through news, through magazines, anything like that. So I was just as guilty. I mean, but I was totally against reading the book because it's like, dude, that's the freaking movie. But then again, the book always usually it's better than the actual movie anyway. So
well, that's the thing that got into it is, you know. So we'll move to after we get to the film. But my reasoning for reading the book before watching the film was I take it back to the first time, you know, when you and I used to ditch school and I'd go to your place obviously to play the video games because I didn't have. My dad kept my Nintendo locked up unless he was around. You had that Star Wars novelization by Alan Dean Foster, where he would elaborate in some parts about the Emperor and Palpatine. That was the first time I read the word Palpatine, you know, in the Old Republic. And so I figured there would be things in the book that would help flesh out the movie, and I wanted that. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted that extra knowledge going into the film. Versus now, when people go, oh, the books are useless, you have to watch them to read. I don't know. There's dissenting opinion on that, but at the time, my opinion was I wanted to go into the film with some additional knowledge, and I wanted to build
Yep.
the images up in my head, you know, more than just seeing them on the screen. 'Cause I knew there'd be two separate experiences, and I was an impatient little fuck, and I had 16 fucking hours to kill. I had 16 hours on and 16 hours off. It was a really weird schedule. They'd have you work, so you know, nothing to do all day but read and listen to this stuff. And so we get back in from training, clean up, and then episode 1 comes out. Now, that weekend I remember quite clearly because we found out what theater it was playing at. It was in Gießen, right? Yeah, it was the Gießen
Yep.
movie theater on post, so it was a little bit of drive away. You arranged transport, you secured transport with Sergeant Lowry, if I remember right, Lowry or whatever.
Yep.
And
Sergeant Lowry.
And I was like, all right, gonna fucking do Star Wars. Get ready to go. And then someone goes, you have CQ duty, Dwayne is. And I'm like, CQ duty. If you don't know what CQ duty is, every weekend they have a front desk in the barracks where the soldiers sleep and eat and whatever. And you have to take your turn every night guarding that little desk. And I had weekend shift. I didn't know. They put my name up that day. Because it wasn't up that Thursday, I know for a fact. But I didn't check that day. And I think someone... to this day, I stand that someone knew I was going to see Star Wars that night
Oh, definitely.
and threw
Dude,
my name on there to keep me from going. You know,
no, dude. When you started having all those back problems, people started coming at you like that. So
Yeah.
that was definitely planned.
and
for them to
we
throw
were
you
not
on
hiding our
yes.
love of Star Wars in the movie. You know.
Oh
like,
God, no.
Yeah. So I think that was planned, and so I had to pay. I paid a guy $120 to cover my shift, so I could go, and so I could go not see the movie, so I could go sit outside the theater for 24 hours and then see the movie Saturday. Is how it worked.
Yep.
So we wanted to spend all night outside waiting for this movie. We wanted that experience, and so that's what I did. I paid a guy $120. Sergeant Lowry gave us a ride. I remember there was this guy, LaRose. This is funny. This guy, he joined in. I want to go see Star Wars 2. And for some reason, we decided to hate that guy, even though we didn't have any reason to. We're like, oh, we don't like LaRose. We don't know why. Like, we just decided he was the guy we weren't going to like. We tried to ditch him.
Well, he was annoying as shit, dude.
He was slightly annoying. But he was a friendly geek, but he was just like, we were geeks, but sometimes you find a geek that annoys even the geeks, you know, like alpha geeks, you know, beta geeks. And LaRose was slightly annoying, so we ditched him, and then he showed back up. I'm like, I don't know what we were thinking. He's going to come to the theater, you know, so whatever. But so we ditched LaRose, we go down there. We spent all night outside, and there were other soldiers there. That was really cool, right? There were other soldiers, maybe like 5, I want to say 5 or 6. They brought the TV, we had the movies playing, we did role-playing game. We unplugged a soda machine so we could plug in all the video games. So we were playing Shadows, we were playing, well, I actually played a lot of GoldenEye, of all fucking things. We were doing Star Wars role-playing with the music all night long, stayed up all night, and then clean up in the morning, we all wait. Everyone's family show up. We got kids in Darth Maul outfits, lightsaber battles. It was pretty amazing for being a little theater, you know what I mean, with a small little American community.
In another country, yeah, it was awesome.
In another country, yeah. I mean, and I never had thought, Rich, when we were walking out of that Jedi screening, you know, of the special edition, that when we saw episode 1, it would be like that. You know, like, wow, we're actually in the army, and, you know, we're in another country of all fucking places. So okay, check this out. We get center row seats, right? The theater dims. Can't wait. The movie starts. Ba-ba, Star Wars. Oh, this is going to be amazing. Get to their opening crawl, which, okay, taxation, whatever. Get to the part where they land on the planet, and the film rips in two. The film just... No movie. And I remember stopping and looking at you, like...
Like, is this part of the movie?
Yeah, like, is this Gremlins 2? Like, I remember Gremlins 2?
It's so bad.
Or the first Gremlins.
It's so bad it just killed itself.
It was the first Gremlins, right? Where the just rips, and then they're fixing it in the movie theater and everything. And I was like, this can't be happening. And sure enough, the film disintegrated. Like, they not even that far into the movie. They didn't even get off Naboo. Wasn't even that far into the film. And they were like, movie's canceled. No refunds. You know, we just left. Sad. It's you, me, and McKinnon, and Sergeant Lowry just driving back. You know, just we didn't even get to see the movie, and I had spent $120 to not work that night. And to
To not
lament,
see a movie.
yeah, to lament, we went back and bought Pod Racer. We bought Pod Racer.
Yep.
Came back to the barracks, started playing Pod Racer, having a good time, and then I think was it you or McKinnon? Someone said they're playing the movie's playing again, like they got it fixed. Someone said they got it fixed. I
Yeah.
can't remember who it was. And then we went back for the 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock showing and saw it that night, and then
Yep.
came back. So, um, now let's just be
We did
honest.
not go back.
Let's not. Go ahead.
No, we didn't go back with Sergeant Lowry that time.
No, it was
thank
just
God.
you, McKinnon, and myself. How did we get there? Did LaRose? How did we get there?
I rented a car, dude. I rented that little Ford Focus.
Okay.
That white Ford Focus on post.
Right, yeah, that was. See, folks, I have a hard time remembering that kind of stuff because I didn't drive from 1998 till 2000. You know, like I didn't drive ever. I just took the train everywhere. So, like anytime I
The train
got,
was the best.
yeah, I missed the trains in Germany. So, okay, so we go see the movie. Your thoughts at the time, if you can recollect them, Rich, we were very happy with the Phantom Menace overall at the time, right?
Oh, honestly, dude, I when I saw Phantom Menace the first time, it was like, holy shit, a new Star Wars movie. And I won't lie, dude, I would really actually enjoyed. This is before I started analyzing, and this is before like the first month of Star Wars Episode 1. I was like totally wrapped up in it. I loved it. My favorite scene in the movie was the pod racing scene. That and Darth Maul getting cut in half. And then after that, you know, like I said, I was enamored of the movie when it first came out. I totally loved it. So, and you did too. And that's the funny thing when I look at the timeline of transitioning from really enjoying the film to like being in total disgust, it's hilarious because it took years, like at least a couple of years, for us to really go. You know, when Attack of the Clones came out, we're like, Attack of the Clones. That's when we started. When we looked at it, and went, okay, that's when we started really analyzing the films themselves and looking at Phantom Menace and going, dude, seriously, what the hell did he do?
Well, we can get
That's
into. I
when we
remember
saw-
the first time it was obvious, and you know, I was afraid to say. I think you said it first, but so we see the Phantom Menace, we like it. It eventually comes out on VHS tape, widescreen. I was working at the gym on post at the time, doing my physical therapy, and you said they got the fucking movie. It's at the PX. So you got it, brought it back. You know, we got pizzas. We sit down, we watch it, and they had the episode 1 documentary on there. It was an hour-long documentary where you get to watch. It's fucking fascinating, folks. I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. You can download it, or maybe it's on one of the DVDs or something. I couldn't tell you. I don't own the movie.
It's on the DVD edition. It's on the DVD edition.
So you watch this thing, and you can clearly now. On one hand, during the documentary, they're telling you, "Oh, we're doing all these great things. It's about the story. It's about the characters, and it's amazing." On the other hand, you're seeing these people look really conflicted.
Like
you see,
no,
you see Lucas pulling his hair out. You see him like, I don't know, may have gone too far. You know, you
know, conflicted is not the word I would use. I would use terrorized, because there's if you're talking about the one I think you're talking about, it's the one where Rick McCallum basically says, you know, Lucas wanted us to do this, and so we watched the first rough cut of the film, and it was like, holy crap, there's so much in this scene. It was the scene on Naboo when they're about to fight the droid army, and he says
the whole battle.
Yeah, and he's like, I want to see this, and I want to. What happened was Lucas went from practical effects to like a kid in a candy shop with a computer. He could do everything that he ever imagined, and he wanted them to do it, and he bullied them, and he wouldn't listen to anybody's advice. It was all Lucas all the time. Back then, I was an elitist.
I have my opinions on why that is now, but at the time, again, I have to stress we were so into the making of the films that the quality of the film was one thing, but we were really impressed with the visual effects element too. You know what I mean? Like, so, on one hand, we would be like, the effects were amazing. It was an amazing film to watch. You could see all the different things, digital creatures, and so many, the speed, the pod racing, all this stuff is really well done. On the other hand, you know, you got like these really weird like jump cuts where they're just running in the desert for no reason, and you know, the Queen's doing weird shit that don't make no sense, and Obi-Wan's not even in the film, really. You know what I mean? And I'm like, wait,
Exactly.
I thought Anakin grew up with his brother on this planet. I don't understand. You know what I mean? Like, it just felt like, it felt like, you know, and you were like, it felt like we were expecting one thing, we got another, and then so they were like, okay, so Lucas changed his mind. It's this other way now. When does Owen show up? You know, because I always felt for me like the big connect was going to be at the point where Anakin tells Owen, "No, I'm going to go save the universe," and he ends up destroying it. So when you see Episode 4, when Owen says, "No, Luke, you need to stay here one more summer," Owen's kind of right in a way. You know what I mean? Like he has a point. If you've seen that other shit, that would be the change. Well, you know, the last time Owen told his brother not to fuck around, now he's telling his nephew to not do. The kid's doing the same shit. He can make the galaxy 10 times worse. And so I was like, that would be a great spin, and that never happened, you know. And so
Well, my whole thing was,
sticking to the
and
Phantom
to
Menace
the
though, that wasn't in the movie. I want to before we move into the other two. So,
well, I'm talking about the
yeah,
Phantom
okay.
Menace, though. My biggest complaint with the film, as far as stories go, is the acting was very dry. Um,
Or zombie.
Lucas can write a story, but he cannot direct people, and that's my biggest complaint. Just with the movies, but as far as the story goes, I did not want to see an 8-year-old Anakin. I didn't. I wanted to see someone who was in his teens or early 20s that was trying to get the hell off the planet, and he meets Obi-Wan. And I wanted a story about Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker's relationship and how they started and how they grew. And it didn't happen. Like you said, Obi-Wan was barely in the friggin' film. You know, and it's literally supposed to be about this kid who, you know, changes the galaxy in a major way, but his relationship with Obi-Wan was huge. It should have been. You have to go from there and stop and say, okay, this is what happened in A New Hope. He killed the guy who was his mentor. He killed him.
Yeah, his
You
mentor and his
almost
best
don't.
friend, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what's actually
Well, he's
happening
like.
right there.
Well, he raises that's the whole point. When a Padawan when a master takes on a Padawan, it's like they become father and son almost. So you have Obi-Wan, who is basically a father figure, and Anakin, who is a son figure who becomes a son, and you're supposed to show and see this relationship, how they go from, you know, him learning to him trying to surpass to him turning to the dark side. I didn't. You don't see that very well in the prequel trilogy. So,
And we
and
certainly didn't
Phantom
get
Menace
any of
didn't.
it in that movie. And so
Well, that's the thing. You know, you didn't get any of that in that film.
so I'm getting to that point because I remember when we were watching the tape, that was the first time you sat there and Liam Neeson says that line, "We na to the Naboo." Like, like and he says this line in a very stilted way where it's like, "You need to understand the you and the Naboo." And you were like, Naboo." Like you're like, he's saying that shit. She doesn't even care. Like I was like, oh, we can complain about this now. Like like we can do that.
Yeah.
It's okay because it's kind of dumb too. I don't know about that one. Like
Well, it was the dam breaking, dude. It was like we had seen the film like I think 3 times, 4 times by then in a theater, and we were waiting for it to come out, and then it came out, and without sitting in a theater and critiquing a film in the theater where there's bunches of other people, we could just sit there in the comfort of a room and break this movie apart piece by piece, the acting, the effects, all of these things, and we could really analyze it and say, okay, here's what we thought was going to happen, here's what actually happened, what's good about it, what's not good about it. And I think once I said that and really took a look at the acting, and you went, okay, it's time to really break this film apart. And that's what we did. And we spent the whole time waiting for Attack of the Clones, just tearing Phantom Menace a new asshole.
yeah, and then we did something a little interesting. Beyond just saying, okay, here's what we know, whatever. We just I think the consensus that we had at the time was he's just rusty.
Lucas is just
Yep.
rusty. He'll get this
Yep.
worked out. You know what I mean? So whatever.
He'll work it out, the bugs out, the rest will come off for the second
I
film.
remember the exact quote. It's not Batman and Robin. You know, it's not like it's fucking horrible. It's just like, well, you know, okay.
It could be better.
Yeah. I figured it was even with Jedi, because Jedi has its bad and good moments too, you know?
I don't, because Jedi is a really good film.
Look, looking back on it, I think Jedi's still stronger. But at the time, I figured they were even for different reasons. So that was my opinion. So then after that, I had a computer, I had Photoshop, you know, and you said to me, why don't we make a fan film? You know? And which the only time the only thing on the internet that was being done at the time was people before episode 1 were making their own like weird trailers where they edited up footage of like Braveheart and they'd rotoscope lightsabers in, or they do some minor CG ships kind of moving around. Remember that? Like, remember the idea that?
Well, there was a couple things. There was a lot of extended universe. There was a lot of EU stuff out there.
Well, there was the
Where
Boba
people were
Fett
making
bounty
films.
hunter one where it's like a comic book where that was really cool. Bounty Trail, I think it was called.
Yeah.
And then there was Cops.
Well, there's
Troopers.
Troopers is what it was called. Now there was a few things. But they were big production. There was nothing like middle of the road. It was all usually pretty big production stuff where they had like crews and they were trying to make, you know, the Thrawn trilogy come to life in a fan film. And usually they had Mara Jade because everybody wants to see a hot ass redhead. So, you know. That was the big thing back then. It was the Thrawn trilogy, and it was usually always Mara Jade a lot of the time.
Yeah, so you said, hey, I want to make a fan film. Let's do that. And I had just seen a movie called Mononoke, Princess of Mononoke. And
Yep.
I said I'm more interested like in animation than live action in a way, you know. So I don't know if we can make an animated movie. Maybe we could do like, you know, drawings, like storyboards or
Well,
something.
At the time, I think we were still kind of watching, really into the Fatal Fury series.
The Fatal Fury motion pictures, yeah,
Yeah.
which were really good, and you know the Batman animated movies, which you know the world's finest, and the you know and that sort of thing. And so we said, okay, you said, Rob, I want you to write it. I think you gave me a preface that it needed to feature your character. You had a character called Ben Starkiller, obviously named after the original Starkiller, and you wanted him to be like a Jedi or something. And I said I didn't want to write any kind of Jedi. I was like,
No,
Jedi.
Well, originally, that's what you had said. I'm not writing anything about Jedi because it's already out there. Lucas is doing it. Let's do something different. And at the time, I had from the West End role-playing game a character named Ben Starkiller that was a master of Turakai.
The 1997, based off the 1997 fighting game, Masters of Turakai.
Yeah. And so you said, okay, let's go with that. And so we took some elements from the original, like the scripts that Lucas wrote with the Masters of the Bundukai and the Monks of Bundukai and things like that, and kind of wrote I kind of went with that and said, okay, let's write a story based off of this martial fighting thing where, you know, basically Jedi feared true masters of Turakai because it was steeped in the Force.
The idea that we agreed to together was to create a martial arts Force movie, basically. So instead of fighting with lightsabers, you could deflect a lightsaber not with your arm, but with the Force, manipulating the Force in a way that could deflect if Vader could stop a blaster, you know what I mean? He probably could stop a lightsaber. So these people, instead of using weapons, they would do the martial arts, and we would use this Turakai, you know, idea as a basis. And then you were going to focus on the modeling, you know, any modeling 3D stuff, and then I had to go write it and do character designs. That's what I do.
We were going to do 3D cell shaded. It was
if we could animate it in 3D, we were going to do it cell shaded, or we would just default to storyboards. The goal was to try to do animation, even if it was very limited. We really wanted to try that. We were thinking way ambitious. So I sat down with the process of trying to write a movie script, which I had never done before. I've written
when I say I've written scripts when I was like a kid, I just write them out as a story. I didn't actually write exterior, interior dialogue. I didn't know what a script looked like until the THX re-releases because they came with these annotated screenplays. So I had this book of
Yep.
annotated screenplays, and I would read through it and say, okay, that's what a movie script looks like, more or less. So I started counting the word crawl. How many words are in the word crawl? Okay, that means I need like 75 words essentially, and I need about how many pages? 75. Then I found a book on screenwriting that says a minute per page, so I figured between 60 and 70 minutes would at least give us about a movie, you know. And then I set about trying to write this thing, and I came up with this thing called Star Killer: The Simple Truth. Not the greatest name. I wanted a name that my thinking at the time was I wanted something that was an internal journey more than a giant war film. It would be like a setup for a war film. And
Do you remember the original scripts? Do you remember the original name though?
the original name?
Because I still have the original script.
What was the original name?
Star Killer, Son of Suns.
Oh yeah, Son of Sons. Yeah, because we were just borrowing the Journal of the Will stuff. But what
Yes, we were.
what I arrived to, I think I wrote 3 drafts, and look, the writing was very sort of influenced. It was a cross between my sense of humor and the structure of the prequels. But the setup was that you had this guy named Ben Starkiller, who was currently a bounty hunter, and you arrive with him in this space sequence where he's protecting a guy. He's a bodyguard. He's protecting this guy. He ends up botching the shit up, and the client basically blows up his home or some shit. He comes back to he's how do I say this? He used to be a student of the truck guy. Rejected all that shit, wanted to live his own life. He's been slumming it as like a bodyguard bounty hunter kind of guy because he has like force abilities, minor force abilities, so he's pretty good. But he's difficult to work with. He gets in the way of himself. Shit goes down, so he can't. He's a marked man, and so he goes back home, right? And he happens to arrive at a point where his home planet, these 2 races are trying to form a treaty because they're being like encroached by the Old Republic. And at the time, this is when I was really following like the Israel versus Palestinian debate. It's like 2000.
Yeah.
And so I saw this point where each side they had so many years of internal conflict that neither side could come to a resolution, even though this third party, that at the time was the Epicanthus Legion, but it was basically the Old Republic, they're going to come in and instill their values on this culture no matter what. And if these 2 cultures can't, deal with it together, the whole planet's going to be.
They're gonna wipe them.
And one side basically at the end decides to just murder the other side and be like, we're going to take over everything because the only way that can work is if we have total control. And Ben sort of
subjugation.
And so like,
Yeah.
it was very big, it could have used more character moments, but I think the thing that came out of it that I'm really proud of was I had envisioned the fights to not just be martial arts for the fighting, but that they could take the force and then manipulate the environment. So they'd have these gardens where they would like Tai Chi gardens, because I started doing a lot of research on Tai Chi. And so they would be able to manipulate water and form sculptures and take rocks and lift them up and block. Like if Vader came at you with the lightsaber, instead of me trying to block it, I could raise all these rocks out the ground and throw a million rocks in between the lightsaber and deflect and move things around. And I was like, oh, this would be a tremendous way to fight. They could come up with sickles. I call them like size sickles, where they would come up from the ground and the enemies would run on top of them, flip over, and then throw the wall at you. You know what I mean? And you could like, move it around. And years later, this cartoon came out called Avatar: The Last Airbender. Richard.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there watching it, and my fucking jaw just dropped. I'm like, this is it. Like, this is exactly the fire culture was I wrote these Bogan lords versus the
Bundakai.
The Bundakai, and it was basically the earth benders versus the earth and water benders versus the fire benders. Like, that's what I wrote essentially. And I just look at it like, it was so ambitious. I found the limits through writing this fan film. I found the limits of my ability as an artist. Like I found out what I could and couldn't draw. Didn't really understand perspective to the point where I could draw ships and things like that. Had to really learn construction and character design fundamentally through character design, how to do model sheets and how to make characters actually build things and try to model ships with actual shapes and I found the limits of what I could do, and we spent the last 2 years in our army trying to make that happen. Uh, and look, I produced a third draft, produced character designs, produced, we did a little temp soundtrack, but could never get it moving. Even our technology was hard because it was like I had Premiere, but I didn't know how to use it. I didn't know how we could scan drawing. I had a scanner,
Yep.
but I didn't understand the process of scanning in images, putting them in Premiere, and timing them to music. I thought we needed After Effects, but I didn't understand what After Effects actually did. I knew we needed these things. I didn't know how to use them, and there was no internet tutorials. There was no clear explanation on how to do that.
No, back then it was all learning curve, man. It was all learning curve, and I was trying to learn how to model in 3D and trying to learn how to get. I think what were you 3D Studio Max? I think was what we were using back then.
3D Studio Max, but then I gave you a copy. I downloaded off this website illegally, obviously. Animation Master, because I said they're using
Yeah.
this for this movie called Pitch Black, which turned out to be Maya. So I gave you Maya before it was Maya.
Yeah.
But we didn't actually know what to do, like how you model a character from a drawing. The closest we really got to it, where the tools were more efficient, was you managed to model the Ghostbusters house and the Half-Life engine, like World Builder or whatever. And but we never
Hammer.
got. Well, now a couple things. Another thing that came from that script that I found interesting, moving into Attack of the Clones, was the ship that I designed for our character Starkiller looks just like the bounty hunter ship in Attack of the Clones. It had these two prongs.
Yes,
it
it
came out.
does.
The center cockpit. I mean, it's the same color. So Attack of the Clones, it starts to come out, the concept art, and then the Ben Starkiller ship is essentially in the movie, and I was like, fuck, you know what I mean? We were right, essentially. That's a cool design, but so that didn't really work out. I realized the limits of my abilities, and then you switched duty stations. You went from Germany to Texas or Kansas.
Kansas.
Kansas. You went to Kansas. I was supposed to go to Texas. I never left Germany out until I exited the military. You go to Kansas. We split up. This is the first time we split up ever, right? Like
Pretty much.
permanently. Yeah. So that wasn't the best of times. Like we both were like, I guess we're gonna have to move on in life now.
The other half. Well, when someone's the other half of your brain, it feels like. I mean, shit, dude. It's kind of complicated when you end up having to split up and go separate ways.
Yeah. So you went off to Kansas, and we didn't really keep in very good touch until I want to say 2002, when Attack of the Clones. You moved back. You came back. So I had exited the military in March of 2001. Went back home. My father had a heart attack the year prior, so I was taking care of him and helping him with his company. And then I decided to go to art college. And if y'all know me, that went horribly wrong. Uh, to improve on where I left off. Like I knew I couldn't take myself forward as an artist. I thought an art college would help. But Attack of the Clones comes out, and I go and grab the CD again, whatever. And you had just moved back to Lakeside. I said, come over to my house, listen to the soundtrack, And we just listened to the soundtrack before I'd even seen the movie. And it was really cool to listen to the John Williams scores, and it felt awesome. And then you and I took you up to go see the movie. I saw it without you the first time, but I took you to go see the IMAX version in Universal City. The IMAX version in Universal City, which was a different cut because you hadn't seen it yet. And now people don't know that IMAX cut was a different cut of Attack of the Clones, where they omitted a lot of the romance scenes. They omitted a lot of the romance scenes. And
Thank God, too.
Yeah, and you thought that was the movie, so you came out. I remember you going, that was actually pretty good. You know what I mean? It's got some stuff, but that was pretty good. And then you saw the full version on videotape after, and you're like, I want the IMAX version back.
It's like, what the fuck is this? What am I watching? It's like bad romance novels with shitty acting. That's basically what I had. That's all Attack of the Clones is to me. And I mean, like, the best part of the film is the last part where they're fighting and there's clone troopers and Jedi and fucking Jango Fett gets his head cut off. That's the best part. To me, that's the best part of that film. Well, and the asteroid chase scene with Obi-Wan. That's a really cool part too.
Yeah, I mean, like, I enjoyed seeing the Clone Wars finally, being able to say I saw it. that this thing we talked about. I didn't know, like, I thought the battle was better than watching the Gungans flop around on walls. You know what I mean? Fighting droids. So I was like, well, the fighting's more intense and they're CG troopers, but the CG looks a lot better than the Gungans did. And so I came away thinking like that battle was pretty good. The lightsaber fight was kind of boring. And Yoda, I don't know if Yoda needs a lightsaber, but didn't ruin it for me. Like, whatever. Hated, yeah.
We all knew that was coming, dude. We all knew that was coming. Everybody wanted to see Yoda fight, and hell, like, after years after when I got Attack of the Clones DVD set with the commentary disc, again, Rick McCallum was in there saying, like, George was like, I want a CG Yoda. And at the time, they couldn't do shit like that still. The technology wasn't quite there yet. But Industrial Light and Magic came through for him again. He said, make it happen. I don't care how it happens, make it happen. And so they did. And it was like just watching Rick McCallum, like, so, like, Lucas made us do this. It's like being beaten by the Dark Overlord.
Yeah, I remember the making of Attack of the Clones that was also on the DVD or tape release at the time. Like, Lucas was really stuck on Yoda saying that line, the Clone Wars had begun, and this guy had to animate it like 800 fucking times. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It was like with incremental differences. The incremental the differences were so minute. Oh, he was the only one who didn't get it. And you could just see this poor animator just locked in a room working on that one shot for God knows how long.
Begun the Clone Wars have. And I was like, come on, dude. Just shoot the frickin' thing,
Now,
wow.
At this point in our lives, that was the last time we saw a Star Wars movie together, because at this point in our lives, you got, what, 2 kids already? I think you have 2?
Yep.
Yeah,
2 kids.
You had 2 kids, a wife. I had school full-time, working full-time, and I started freelancing and going to cons. And as life happens, we split apart, I never thought it happened to us, but it happened, as life moves away. And as the years went on, in between 2002 and 2005, I became less and less interested with Star Wars. And the reason being is I eventually saw a movie called The Matrix. I want to say around summer 2000, it was a year after it came out, which I loved the first movie. Saw the Lord of the Rings films, did not give a shit before they came out, and eventually came to the conclusion that this felt more like Star Wars than Star Wars. Like those first films, like just the making of
Then the prequel, yeah.
The grassroots, the shooting on location, all the technological, like it seemed like a lot of grassroots guerrilla filmmaking with the budget. And the packaging, when you got the extended editions, they were heavy. They felt like tomes. The Star Wars packaging just kept feeling cheaper and cheaper. Like it would rattle in the cages and shit. Like you could just feel the discs, What do you feel about that, Rich? Like, remember when we used to buy Star Wars things? When you bought the X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, the Super Nintendo, or the Shadows of Empire games, they felt solid. They had this solidary feel. It felt like you were getting something, And then by the time the DVDs 2004s came out, it felt cheap. Like the covers were bad Photoshop filter, like the lens flare, generic lens flare.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my god, dude. I still remember the one. Even today, I still get this really cool, giddy feeling. I like to go into a specialty shop in the mall or into Walmart and see what new covers Star Wars has. Like, what new art did they use? It's almost like a game, to see who did the art. Was it Drew Struzan? Who did the art? Did they overdo it? Did they underdo it? Did they not do it enough? Is it just like literally copy and paste kind of bullshit? And for a while there, it really felt like it was just like, oh, let's put another copy of this Star Wars out.
Well, to reiterate that point, when the books were coming out in the mid-90s, they had commissioned Struzan to do a lot of the art. So every time a book would come out, whether the book was great or not, like you'd get a great book, like the Han Solo
cover.
With the Han Solo AC Crispin trilogy would be all Drew Struzan art, really awesome. Then you get this book like The Courtship of Princess Leia, which is not so great, but badass Struzan art. So it felt you were getting, something that was worth something.
Your money's worth.
Yeah,
you're getting a piece of art anyway.
And then with the Episode 1 Terry Brooks novel, it was just that generic photo, of like Darth Maul, and so it becomes that, and then it becomes it's just like the logo Star Wars with the Imperial symbol. You know, like in these weird books where you're just like, there's nothing artistic about this anymore.
They're not putting any effort into it. They're just churning them out, and that's what well, we'll talk about that later as far as future of Star Wars. But
Yeah, we'll get to that.
yeah.
So,
yeah, it seemed very flimsy. Their effort seemed very flimsy for a while there, and that was just before they announced. Well, just that was before Lucas announced he was selling his IP.
oh, yeah, we'll get to that in a second. So before Sith came out, I was really sort of disenfranchised. I was like, Lord of the Rings, they did it. You know, they fucking did it. Like this is
You
Star
know,
Wars is
like I
whatever.
said,
You know,
Lucas stepped away from the practical application of physical, real-world effects. He stepped away from that, and I think that's a big downfall with Star Wars: The Prequel, because they don't feel alive. They don't feel organic. They don't feel real. They feel kind of like very. It just feels very dead.
but
It
I
doesn't
did
feel like
but I did enjoy the Williams music from the prequels.
you can't go wrong with John Williams. It's
Yeah.
always the music. It's always been the music.
So during this period too, as I was learning to draw and all this other stuff, I found this I stress to call it a fan edit. This guy, I still have them. He made a series of Star Wars music collections called Symphony of the Saga. Where
Yeah.
and I've given this to you, man. It's fucking awesome, right? He put all the themes in order, blending into one another as if it were a continuous, orchestrated event. Where the themes are clearly laid out, they don't overlap or run back into one another. And I've been this guy's biggest champion since I can't remember his name, but anytime it would appear on the Force.net initially, and then at fanedit.org. I mean, the Star Wars Symphony of the Saga is just a phenomenal collection this guy put together between the prequels and the original trilogy. He just made a really great way to listen to the music, and I would still listen to that all the time. So I figured, look, if Sith is coming out, Revenge of the Sith, and I don't even care about the movie anymore, at least I'm going to get some great John Williams music. And like on target, as the movie comes out the month before the soundtrack's released, and I buy it and I listen to it. I was working at Kinko's at the time while I was in school, and I remember listening to it in the back room because I was assistant manager. And that John Williams, it was the Jedi March, but it was a military drum beat version, And I was like, oh, this is finally, we get to hear the start of the Force theme as a battle march, And I was like, this is going to be amazing. And I really liked the music. And then I saw the movie. Our buddy Dan actually took me to go see it because I didn't want to pay money. That's how mad I was. He took me to go see it, and I couldn't hear the fucking soundtrack, Rich. Like, you can't hear the John Williams music. It's below the sound effects in that film, man.
Well, my biggest problem with the prequel, as far as John Williams goes, the Phantom Menace, he reused a lot of the same sounds, a lot of the same music. It seemed rushed. Attack of the Clones didn't seem fleshed out enough musically. The third movie did, but like you said, you can't even hear the friggin' soundtrack when you can just in the opening scene before you hear Jedi starfighters flying in and all that. But after that, it's just so background. It's not even funny.
Yeah, so I believe that that's a product of one, the way they were re-editing takes on episode 1. They just took the themes he did and then recut the music, in an editing bay versus scoring to all their edits. I think they were changing the scenes and doing this. It's called nonlinear editing, where you can take 2 different takes and then match them together, remove a character, put them in, create new takes, create new cuts. And then rather than have the composer come in and rescore it, they just took those themes and then edited it to that stuff, which is why you have a lot of the repeat of the Duel of Fates or the repeat of that other theme, syncing back up, because it's not actually composed in that manner. Before, they would play the movie on a screen and Williams would play the scene, the music to that.
He would compose as the movie went. Yeah.
And here, Ben Burton, the sound designers are then redoing it in a way a fan edit would, like, of all things. So I came out of this.
It was cheaper.
I mean, what could be said about what could be said about Revenge of the Sith, dude? You know what I mean? It just was what it was. It just completed whatever they were telling. And the only time I even saw it with you was right before you moved from Lakeside. I finally bought a giant HD TV, and you went to the
Yep.
store with me to go pick one out, and they had Revenge of the Sith playing there, and we were able to finally have a conversation about it, and it's a lava battle, and and that goes on and on. I mean, when did you see it, Rich? Because I didn't see it with you. When did you see?
I actually saw Revenge of the Sith in the theater, and I went. When did I go? I went by myself actually because Chrissy didn't want to go, and we had kids, and she's like, "Just go see it if you want to go see it." And I was like, "Well, I'll go see it." So I saw it in the theater. I did not see it on opening day. I waited a couple weeks and I went and saw it. And I remember, because at the time I was literally imbibing and just sucking up and every bit of Star Wars information. And at the time I knew that there was a lightsaber duel in there that was the longest martial sword fight in any movie in the history of cinema. And I was like, this had better be a good friggin' battle. I mean, this shit better be like, it better make the movie. And it's the only scene in the movie that I really like.
That's fair.
But it's the
only one you remember, I think, right? Like,
it's literally like the only. Oh, come on, dude. Like, you see Hayden. No, I have to admit that I do remember the part where he goes and slaughters all the
oh, okay, the kids,
the younglings.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, that's having kids, dude. That's like, that's fucked up, dude. Having kids, like somebody going in there and just slaughtering your children, that's fucked up.
You could have just blown up the whole Jedi Temple. You know what I mean? We just assumed they were in there, but...
I was totally disappointed in the fight scene between Yoda and the Emperor. It was so underplayed, but it was so over the top at the same time.
We talked about that growing up, about what would happen if those two fought, especially when they started making like the fighting games. I remember when they made Chirac-Kai, the explanation for not putting Yoda in the game or something at the time was, well, Yoda is too small to fight. I'm like, well, first off, it's a video game. It's not fucking canon. You know what I mean? Like, you can just make Mortal Kombat goofy game for all I give a shit. The video games, by the way, folks, video games don't have to be canon. They can just be fucking video games, please. The Star Wars arcade game isn't canon, all right? It's just a fucking Star Wars game. It's fun. But we talked about how they fight, and I mean, lightsabers were never a part of the equation in that talk. How a Jedi Master and a Sith Lord, the Emperor, would fight. We figured it would be through like arcane Jedi magics or some shit. You know what I mean? Like I never, because I mean, even the Emperor and Jedi looks at the Luke saber and says that's a Jedi's weapon. Like he doesn't even have a saber. He doesn't give a shit. I never once thought Yoda and the Emperor would fight with lightsabers. Like, when the Emperor's throwing the Senate stuff at him, that's what I thought. Like, it would be this...
Exactly.
Like I imagine when Yoda was on that planet, with Dagobah, right? He was on Dagobah, in that cave. I think we talked, we'd always dream about maybe he fought a Sith Lord there, and they fought on that planet because you would wreck a whole planet fighting. These two guys maybe could wreck, do some serious damage if they...
What's on mine?
Like, maybe if a Jedi Master and a Sith Lord got together, they would agree to meet up, in a desolate planet where they could just fuck shit up. Western style.
Yeah, that whole scene with Yoda in the end, I really don't think the Emperor was that powerful. I don't think he could have taken Yoda. But you have to look at it from the storyline part. Yoda makes it to the, Empire Strikes Back, so obviously he wasn't going to win that battle, but they weren't going to kill him off. So, I don't know, dude. I did that whole, like I said, dude, that whole movie, the two most memorable things that happen to me are the youngling deaths and the longest lightsaber duel in the history of Star Wars. So
I remember in the theater, it's the first time I did groan when in Attack of the Clones when Anakin was riding the giant flea. I was like, all right, but I remember when they're on the table. They're on the table, and they're on the table or they're on the floor. But each one, Obi-Wan and Anakin are like just twirling their lightsabers around them. So it's just like, I'm like, why? Why are you doing this? Like, just...
You mean, why are they flourishing?
Yeah, I mean, like what? It's not even like what Ray Park was doing with Wushu, where his whole body becomes a living weapon. He's moving about in a way that it's hard to attack that because he's moving the saber and his body in almost a figure-8 motion. It's hard to fight that.
Okay, well,
They're just
can I
standing
give
there
you
and
something?
twirling their blades. So go ahead.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you look at the way the films progress, for example, Phantom Menace was for a new generation of Star Wars people. It wasn't for previous fans, because if it were, it would actually have some relevance to actual Star Wars. The second film was for all the teenagers that grew up with that. It was a love story. There was nothing in that was for the fans, really. And then the third film was to try and make up for totally screwing up the first two films, and he did a piss poor job acting wise. I don't think the script was really as fleshed out as it could have been.
Well, no, there's a book I recommend if you haven't listened. You can get an audio format, Rich. If you don't have it, I can get it for you. It's How Star Wars Conquered the Universe. Have you seen this? It just came out last year, actually. So it leads all the way up until right before the first trailer was released last year for Episode 7. And
Yeah.
he actually he had interviews with everybody. Lawrence Kasdan, the guy who wrote Skywalking and everything. And he actually says, look, it took Lucas 4 years to write all those drafts of the Phantom Menace. Attack of the Clones got done in about a year, and Revenge of the Sith got written in like 6 months.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like,
No,
and
it
you
was
see
fair.
it play out on screen, right? Like.
And the way the movie feels, it feels rushed. So like when Lucas gives the excuse, well, I wanted to tell my story. I don't hold no stock into that. I hold no stock in that, because you know what? If you're going to tell your story, at least make it good. At least make it believable, and at least make it fit in the universe which you actually started. But don't just write something you think everybody wants to see.
To be fair, he did apparently contact Lawrence Kasdan, the writer of Empire, Jedi, and co-writer of Force Awakens. He did contact him prior to Episode 1 and asked him to come help him write it. And I think Kasdan's exact words were, "I wanted George to just take sole credit for this one." I felt he should take full ownership. And I think that came from his experience on Jedi. You know what I mean? Like concessions and Lucas getting his way. Like I don't really want to, the way you could read the quote, it's very like I don't really, let him eat it. Let him get.
That's the thing, dude. Like, you have a really great writer in Lawrence Kasdan. He's a great writer. He can take anything and he can flesh it out and give it life on the screen for a screenplay. But what you were seeing with Episode 1 was just him going, dude, I'm taking a step back from this, and I'm going to let you hammer this out yourself, buddy. Go ahead.
No. You got it. Sure, you got it. You're about right. You don't need me.
That's the thing that kills me. Lucas can write. He can, in fact, write. He comes up with great ideas. The problem is he cannot take that writing and transfer it to a medium on the big screen properly. And he cannot direct people properly. Like, the best example that I have of his inability to direct people, okay, Obi-Wan Kenobi is a pretty mellow guy. He's supposed to be. In the opening scene of Sith, the scene where they're in their Jedi Starfighters, there's a scene, and this is just an ode to bad acting from Hayden Christensen and bad direction. Obi-Wan's like, he's like, there's the ship, Master. And he's like, Obi-Wan's like, well, can you see the shields are still up? And he's like screaming, dude, like, come on, dude. Seriously? He's not, and the way that, Ewan McGregor's a great actor. But the way he was in that whole scene, I just was like, dude, please.
Well, they do need to show emotion. We don't want a monotone, Qui-Gon the
No,
whole
I'm
movie.
not.
But I think what you're getting to too is there is no consistent behavior for that character, because in the opening of Attack of the Clones, he's just a total dick to Anakin. You know what I mean? Like, but first they're friends, and then they're dicks, and then they're not, and then they are. He's just all over the place. Here's what I don't understand too about Revenge of the Sith. Explain this one to me. There's powerful Jedi Masters at this point, Jedi Knights, right? They're super powerful.
Yep.
why do the missiles that shoot after those jets drop more droids on their ship? Why don't they just be bombs? Because can't the Jedi just use the Force and fly those fucking things off the ship? You know what I mean? Wouldn't they just be like,
You mean the Buzz Droid
yeah,
scene
why don't they
where
just
they're
use
like,
the Force and just
he's
flick
like-
them off? He's like trying to use his ship to scrape them off, but just use the Force. Just reach out there and swipe them off. Like, wouldn't Obi-Wan just be like, fucking droids? You know what I mean? Like, it'd be done. Like, that sequence just, look, I have a belief, and this is based off having seen the original draft of the Phantom Menace. Jar Jar Binks was not a major player in that film. He was a character that appeared in the beginning, helped him get to the city, goes away. The reason why he's throughout the whole film, I believe, is because Lucas had a company called Industrial Light and Magic and wanted to show what they could do as a company. For these movies were made as demo reels to show what they could do. That's why the Nemodians were originally all going to be CG, and then through production costs and just time, they couldn't do it, and then they had to come up with those shitty fucking costumes at the last second, which is why they don't even animate right and they look weird. They were supposed to look just like the battle droids, thin, frail, bug-like. All these sequences are set up for me, in my opinion, just to show what ILM can do. They're not. It's just a giant tech demo. When you look, we can take the ships and look how they're composited in the cockpits seamlessly, and they go over here, and you could see all the matting. It's just so they could show effects demos. It has nothing to do with wouldn't the Jedi just. I mean, and look, you can think about it too much. I mean, we used to talk about old Alec Guinness Obi-Wan in Episode 4. Did he really need to go on the Death Star, walk out onto a ledge, and shut the shields down? Couldn't he just use the Force to turn those things, really? But maybe the Jedi aren't that powerful. Like, maybe they can't just grab shit they can't see right away, or I don't know. You know what I mean? What are the limits here? So, but clearly, little buzz
I
droids.
think that right there, that scene is. You have to look at the technology at the time. Back then, I don't. Maybe they thought we can't do that, but I mean, look at this like this. You make a good point for the Buzz Droid scene. They literally pushed Droideka in Phantom Menace. Obi-Wan's pushing battle droids and Droideka out of the way, and he's just a Padawan at that time.
Yeah, so anyway, I want to move on from this tag list. So that's the Sith, Revenge of the Sith. We all seen it, and so as far as I'm concerned, Star Wars was done for me. I'll be honest, Rich. At that point, I was like, I'm done with Star Wars.
Actually, you told me at one point, I do believe, dude, I'm done drawing Star Wars. I'm done with Star Wars for right now. It's being overdone anyway. And at the time, it was really Star Wars everything at the time. And so I think you decided that you just told me I'm going to take a step back from Star Wars.
Yeah, I don't want to read the books. I don't care. Don't want to play the MMOs. Don't give a shit. Just gonna go away and do other shit. So this all works until around 2007 when I found a fan edit of a movie called Star Wars Episode 4 Revisited. Now, I'd already known about the fan edits, like the Phantom Menace. I bought that shit. I bought a copy of it on VCD in 2001. The Phantom edit.
Yep.
So I've been well into fan edits because, we're into fan films. But the Adiwan Episode 4 Special Edition blew my fucking mind. This guy Adiwan is in his 40s at the time. Now he's in his 50s, pushing 60. Basically, with some help on the internet, one man fucking did the special edition that we all wanted. Essentially.
Yep.
Fixed Episode 4. Such a level of detail.
The greatest scene in that, dude, the greatest, to this day, mind-fucking-blowing scene is the cantina. To this day. I can watch I have it on my hard drive. I can watch it, and I will watch the scene where Obi-Wan and Luke go to the cantina, Mos Eisley Cantina, over and over again, because what Adiwan did with just that scene, making rubber masks blinking and just move and make them very organic and alive. All of these masks, this is shit shot in the 70s.
Yeah,
He
just
made it
using
come to
After
life.
Effects, the programs we had,
I know.
we didn't know how to
Yeah.
use. He figured out how to go through and make it so the prosthetics blink. Or like when
Yeah.
Greedo gets mad, he emotes. And it's very subtle, but it really works. Like more better than the CG ever did. Like wow, that really
it
works.
was way
Like
better. And he also took out the scene with Jabba, which was I actually thought was a really cool thing for him to take that out. And he also fixed it so Han shoots first,
yeah,
which
when he
is
brought that in.
a point of contention for many people.
And now there's two versions of that episode 4. There's that version, and there's something called the Pierce version. And the Pierce edition basically just omitted a couple shots that he added, which one he added the Duel of Fates music when Vader and Obi-Wan fight, so there's a version with that. And then he added this TIE Fighter CG reveal, which I really like. During the battle of the Death Star, an additional TIE Fighter squadron, when the TIE Fighters, when Vader's squadrons arrive, he added the CG shot that, I don't know, man, it looked fucking awesome to me. And then the Pierce one, he omitted it, which I don't. Only thing the Pierce edition should have done for me was remove the Battle of the Fates music. Like, that's it.
I don't think that piece of music belonged in there, but what I do think is that scene that Adawan put in, as far as the additional squadron in the end of in the Death Star scene, that was amazing. That totally clinched it for me. Between the canteen and that, I mean, come on, dude, you're at the fucking home base of the Empire, literally. You know, their plumbers are working in there. Okay. Imperial plumbers, okay?
Well, Kevin Smith, right?
Right. And so, you know, like they're fucking, it's their base. They're not gonna just go, okay, well, there's some rebels attacking a small thermal exhaust port. We're gonna send 5 fucking ships. We're sending everybody.
And he added way more ships. He increased the TIE Fighter count, the X-Wing count.
Yeah, he did.
He fixed all the map boxes. He fixed the blinking on Vader's chest. You know what I mean? Like, he fixed R2
He made
blinking.
that scene. Well, he turned that from a small-scale looking battle to a full-on, we're fucking assaulting this thing, and we've got every rebel ship available to bring to bear against the Imperial Armada. And that's what we're going to do. And then Vader was, the way they made it looked like Vader was like, yeah, launch them. And then here they are. You know, it was like, holy shit, dude, they're really coming at us with, like, the Empire. Not just, well, let's just send a couple of squadrons.
Yeah, I remember just sitting there dumbstruck, watching it like, this was really good. I like this.
Dude, it was amazing. It made the film
I like
so
Star Wars. Like, I'm allowed to do that now. Like, that's amazing. That was really good. I got to tell everyone I know about it. So, Adawan got that. I immediately found his little thread on the originaltrilogy.com, shared the movie with all my friends I could. And then he immediately started work on Empire Strikes Back. Adawan revisited.
Which he's still not done with, but he's going to be done with it soon.
What was amazing, this is 2007. He's like, this should only take like a month because there's not a lot of changes to make on Empire. Which, in my head, I was like, that's not true. And you can even see like my first post. At first I asked him if he was going to add any more prequel music. And then, like, list of names, these guys, there's a list of 005, there's so many guys on there. They screen cap every frame, and their dissertations on where things should be frame to frame, which I get, in the context of making a film, is impossible to line up perfectly every time. It's just impossible the way you cut footage. But the way they analyze every little fucking thing, and what Adawan's managed to do. So let me just go through a list of things, because the movie should be out next year. It's almost done, right? He spent 8 fucking years making this fucking edit. He basic things like all the clouds on Cloud City are HD photo clouds, no CG trickery. You know, 4K HD clouds. All the matte paintings on Cloud City match the original Macquarie stuff, but are in the same place they were supposed to be versus the special edition shots, which just made up whole new buildings that aren't even like there when you actually line everything up. Fixed all the Dagobah mats aren't flat. He actually went and modeled all the Dagobah trees, like actual models, built them, you know, photographed them,
and filmed it. Yeah.
Oh, it's fucking the asteroid sequence has the asteroid belt is insane. Like scares the shit out of you.
The asteroid scene is just absolutely amazing. The comparison shots I've seen, but the one thing that really got me was he was actually going to build a mock-up, and he ran out of fundage and time, but he was going to redo the entire Wampa scene.
You know, he's building the Wampas next. He's got it put together. It's the very.
Oh, he decided to go back to that.
That's why it's taken so long. He's uncompromising.
Well, he was going to drop that.
No,
He was gonna drop that.
No,
Wow.
Wampa's next, man. That's the last week is like the Wampa's next. Everything else is
Right
done.
on.
Yeah, so I personally, this is when I was almost broke. I put like $300 into the 300 to 400. I bought him the first Falcon kit, the Japanese one, and then they shipped it half broke, and he was all fucking freaked out that I was gonna freak out. I'm like, you can't do anything about it. You got a refund. So I put in I took all the money that I figured I would have spent on Star Wars goods between Attack of the Clones and that film, and gave it to Adiwan to make this film. And it came out to be like $500-600 or something like that. So, yeah, he's rebuilt the Han Carbonite from an actual mold of Harrison Ford, so the shirt is in the same position it should be.
Yep.
He's built. There's so many things. The Rebel base, it's a flat matte painting. You see the transport guys are like, oh, you go here, you go there. That behind there's a flat matte painting. That's a full model now, so it's got 3D depth.
Yep. He went through and did a lot of those. He did small scale models for a lot of this. It was a lot. I mean, and he literally took technology that Lucas used back then, remodeled everything with newer tech, shot it.
The shield generator, he's rebuilt the shield generator so it explodes properly. Like,
from scratch.
The snow speeders are properly matted out now. They are no longer transparent.
Dude, that's one of my favorite things that he's done so far. When you look at the comparison shots on the website, it's absolutely amazing what he's gone in and done with Empire.
The Emperor is the 97 version of the Emperor, not the new, younger Emperor one. But the dialogue matches. He took a composite of the dialogue between the two and got it to so he says what he said in the initial Empire Strikes Back, but with Ian McDermott's voice and the better Ian McDermott makeup, not the new prequel fatty version of Ian McDermott. Chubby.
Yeah, it looks like he's got hot dogs on his face.
Yeah.
I have hot dogs on my face, Darth.
It works incredibly well. Like, it's just going to be a treat, man. So the Adiwan, that was the first coming back to the Force for me. Like, Adiwan's revisited.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what he does with Jedi.
Yeah. I mean, everyone wants to see that, So he'll be doing Jedi and the prequels simultaneously because of the way he's decided to shoot all of the stuff that he needs at once versus having to remake the models every time,
Yep.
So this takes us up to about, I want to say 2011, because at this point I was working at a game magazine that went horribly wrong, left and went back to licensed t-shirt apparel, which is where I got my first break in the real world. And I went back to this company that I got my first job at, and they had gotten the Star Wars license. So I walk in and they're like, Rob knows Star Wars. I'm like, a little bit, and they're like, we want you to work on the Star Wars shirts. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to get to make that cool CK kind of shirt, right? I'm going to get to make those shirts now. This is going to be amazing. And the merchandise had been selling so bad, the only thing that would sell at the time was like pictures of Darth Vader holding up cats, like saying it's meow or never, or Darth Vader on a roller coaster with some stormtroopers. Like, Star Wars had become a joke in merchandise. You could only like Chewbacca with the skateboard. That's what you could do. And you couldn't just do like cool starships, And so me and the art director at the time made a conscientious effort to just try and put the ships on the shirt, like they gotta sell. And we started to make progress. He did this one, my buddy Ray, the art director, he did this one with Rogue Squadron, that's what he called it. It was retro style, and I did a bunch, and we started to get some traction. I put the arcade game on the shirt, which they were like, what is this why is it looking like this? This isn't a video game. I'm like, what do you mean? It's the fucking video game, Like, get the fuck out of here. But the Star Wars Phantom Menace 3D version comes out. So we put together a bunch of Phantom Menace shirts, put it out there, nothing sells. And we got this meeting with Lucasfilm licensing, and they said that they tasked us that we're going to lose the license if we couldn't get the shit to sell. And I'm like, how is it our job to make your merchandise sell? It's not like what we made was bad merchandise. It's that you guys have just been making shitty films for so fucking long, and you haven't made a film since 2005. Wait a minute, this was on the cusp. Avengers had just come out. Avengers just came out. I'm like, guys, Avengers is out. They've been doing Marvel movies since 2008. We had The Dark Knight. They got Fast and the Furious movies. They got, new Hobbit films were being made. They got Harry Potter's. like Star Wars is just kids don't know what it is other than the Lego games, which are cool, but what can you do, you know? And so I was sitting in this room and they're like, well, you got to come up with something. And I went on this rant, Rich. This rant I'll never forget. I wish I had it recorded. My buddy Joe was there with me. And I said, well, basically, they need to make a new movie. Lucas won't make them, so fucking he needs to sell his company. Someone needs to fucking make these movies. The earliest, if they started today, is like 2012. If it started today, it takes them 3 years to make a film. The earliest I see it coming out is 2015. So for 3 years, we're kind of fucked. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's what they need to do. You know, they need to get someone who fucking likes Star Wars to make the shit. And I had just recommended you seen Super 8. And so you went on Facebook at the time and you said, whoever just made Super 8 needs to make Star Wars. I'm like, he just made the Star Trek movies. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to let him do that, but that would be fucking
Well,
awesome.
J.J. Abrams, at the time, I was a big J.J. Abrams fan, but I hadn't seen Super 8, and I fell in love with that fucking movie. I don't care. I will say this flat out. Everything J.J. Abrams has done, I have enjoyed. Even Lost, because honestly, he was only involved in Lost for the first 6 episodes. After that, it was other writers. So
I still
the
like
first
the show. I
6
don't care.
episodes were really good.
I'll take Lost over
I?
fucking half these shows I need to do. So I'll still watch the show.
Yep.
But yeah, so I'm like, you know, let JJ or Brad Bird direct it. You know what I mean? Fucking whatever. And they're like, well, Rob, that's never gonna happen. So we got to make this work. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to do. So 4 weeks later, they announced the sale of Disney, Marvel to Disney. You know, and I'm like, well, they sold it to Disney. Yeah, they sold Star Wars to Disney. And I'm like, they're making new movies. Gotta be. And then they're like, I don't bet that they couldn't. I'm like, no, Disney bought it. They got to be making new movies. And then within a month after that, they announced J.J. Abrams. And I was like, son of a... I ran out my chair. People in the art department. I've said this before. Like, when I work in the art department, Rich, you don't hear from me. I just sit there and work. I'm quiet. Got my headphones on. I work. I jumped out of my chair. I'm like, Star Wars is saved. Like it was like, rejoice! You know? Like, this is amazing.
Dude, it's like I told you before. I was an elitist. A George Lucas elitist. And when he sold the IP to Disney, I wasn't mad that he sold it to Disney. I was mad that he just sold it. You know, and then, like, I was just pissed. I was like, dude, this is your brainchild, and you're going to fucking... It's like having a kid, growing it up, and then throwing it to the fucking wolves. That's the same thing to me. And so I was pissed that George sold out.
For me, I already knew it wasn't going to... It couldn't ruin it because the prequels were one thing. But Marvel wasn't being ruined. And then, two, my first favorite love of Star Wars on a big screen was Star Tours. So Disney seemed to get Star Wars. They didn't seem to get their own fucking... They didn't get Pirates of the Caribbean. But the first movie was great, but they certainly didn't get Haunted Mansion. They may not get their own IP, but for some reason, like, they get Star Wars. I don't know why.
Yep.
And so I was like, step in the right direction, you know. And then, you know, Kathleen Kennedy's running Lucasfilm, which I knew she ran Amblin. If you want to know more about that, go read a book, audiobook. You can listen to these all in audiobooks. It's called They Might Be Kings, which was his Tale of DreamWorks. Yep. I recommend listening to that. So basically, they announced JJ directing. I was like, I go right on the Facebook. I'm like, fucking Rich, dude. You called it. You know what I mean? It's awesome. And, you know, flash forward, during the whole making of, I decided to stay away from every Star Wars spoiler there was.
So did I. That was a key thing to episode 7 for me, is I stayed. Like, with a prequel, I absorbed everything. I wanted to know everything. How they were doing this, what they were using for this and that and everything. And in episode 7, I was just like, you know what? I'm stepping back from it. I'm not going to learn it. When shit would show up on my Facebook page or would show up on my Yahoo page, I would just go scroll past it. I didn't want to know anything.
Yeah.
I wanted to be blind.
It was a complete opposite of 1997, 95, where we wanted to know everything. You know, it just sort of flipped the script, you know? Like, we don't want to be influenced in any way. I don't want it to be ruined. I just want to go there. If it's great, it's great. If it's not, then whatever. You know what I mean? I'll learn my lesson. I want to experience it in the theater. Now, everything else on the internet, I don't give a shit. I'll find out what's going on with Batman v Superman, Avengers, I don't care. You know? But when it comes to Star Wars, I've just decided nothing. I want to know nothing. Like, this is... And it seems a lot of the internet's been on that kick, too. You know? It's really weird how the fans have sort of flipped in terms of... Star Wars sort of created internet spoilers, and now Star Wars fans are taking the spoilers away.
So why we're doing that is because you know, fans learned with episode 1, 2, and 3, too much information may actually be a bad thing. So like there was so much out there with with the prequel. But the one thing I noticed about episode 7, there was a lot of information out there, but it was all. It didn't go into detail about certain things. It didn't go into the movie. It was just about certain aspects of a character, or there was no real details about the movie. They kept all that hush hush. It was just specifics about certain things. It was never directly about the film, so you had this oblivious sort of natural, oh, we don't really know what's going on kind of thing. Plus, you know, J.J. Abrams is very misdirected. You know, he likes to misdirect audiences when he has a movie, and he doesn't want you to know the answer. Like the whole Cumberbatch shit with Star Trek Into Darkness. So
JJ's formula is he takes expectation, he gives you a form, he takes something that you're familiar with, and then flips the results of that. So if you're used to something being one way, he'll play the same beats, but then he'll give you a different result from that. So you're playing against your expectations, and he does that consistently. Mission Impossible, you know, Star Trek, Star Trek 2, Super 8, whatever. He'll consistently do that, you know. And what I like too is JJ isn't, he's not like an invulnerable guy. He's not. You don't look at his movies and go, "Oh, he can do no wrong." His films have some flaws, but I had this conversation the other day concerning video games with on another podcast that we did. I was like about Tim Schafer. You know Tim Schafer from Full Throttle. I said Tim Schafer games. All if you look at Metacritic, right?
Psychonauts 2.
I backed it. Every Tim Schafer game has the same review. Since all the way back at Day of the Tentacle, they get 70 to 80%. They somewhere end up in that margin, and they say the same thing. Great start, story falls apart in the second half, puzzle, something. And they end up with the same review, but 10, 15 years later, you can keep going back to it. They have longevity. They have heart. And I don't think something has to be perfect. I think it needs to do what it does really, really well. And if something's not so perfect, so what? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know this. There is this sort of elite fan thing where if it isn't just, everything isn't just absolutely just right. Like this stream, I didn't expect this stream, like you see us working flawlessly now, right? Like no hiccups. I didn't expect doing the stream that we're going to have all these interruptions. What do? Cancel all of it, you know, scream and throw tabletop my whole shit. just Citizen Kane my fucking room and shit. Like, you know, like sometimes it just doesn't go to plan, dude. That being said, the end result was fucking amazing. And now let's just go all the way back to a year ago, Rich. The first Force Awakens trailer comes out. Did you watch it?
Yes, I did religiously.
How did you? When you saw it, what were your feelings? Like, what did you think?
I got chills, man. I got chills. It was just like, oh my god, holy crap! This is it really this cool? Oh my god! I hope it's gonna be this good. Oh my god! And it was like I watched this thing and I watched it again and I watched it again. I probably watched it about 6 times in a 20-minute period, just watching it, and I was like. Every time I had the same feeling, this excited, elated, emotional kickback to when I was a kid, and we were standing outside the theater going to see Special Edition. It was just this excitement, pure excitement, the real deal, and I was like, holy shit, I hope to God that this movie is that good. I hope.
My wife and I were celebrating our Thanksgiving up in Big Bear, at a place we had our honeymoon, and the trip was one that went horribly wrong. We had this cabin that we always go to. We love it. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's fantastic. And 2 days into our week-long trip, actually the very first day, we had 1 day there. The second day, the water main broke, and they had to shut all the hot water off in the winter. And they're like, well, we're sorry. We have to shut the cabin down. I'm like, you have nothing else? Like, no. You know, and I'm like, we came all this way. You know what I mean? It took to get time off work was fucking almost impossible at the time. You know, and we were really heartbroken. Like we waited all year for that. We went through a lot of shit that year. So, her brother-in-law died, and and I had all these troubles with the Kickstarters
I
and
know how
Josh.
that goes.
Yeah, and so I was like, this was a big deal, and we were fucking heartbroken. And like, well, we have this other cabin we can put you in. It's off out of the way. We went into it. The room, it was like way small. It was a tiny cabin with a large kitchen. It was the kind you'd rent if you went snowboarding and you didn't care. But it wasn't what we were looking forward to. And we're like, what do we do? I said, well, let's enjoy Thanksgiving dinner here, at this place we're at because it's really great scenery. We'll go for walks and we'll write, and then we'll just leave a day early and save some money. So the day we were gonna leave, and we did leave, but that morning I wake up and we were kind of bummed, we're making do. The Star Wars trailer came out. I'm like, check this out. We played it, and just fucking like that was our whole day. Like over and over and over. Like we were just.
It was mind blowing, dude.
Yeah,
Just mind-blowing.
it saved our trip. We were like, this is look, little robot, And my wife was like, is that CG? I'm like, I don't know. I can't tell. I can't tell.
Well, see, yeah. We'll get into that.
We'll get into that.
We'll get it.
But suffice to say, I felt the trailer was like a big, whoo. You know what I mean? Like I think we're in good territory. Now.
Yeah, exactly. It was a big weight lifted. Like, this is what I've been waiting for. This is what Star Wars should be. That's exactly how I felt. This is what I've been waiting for.
Yeah, and I remember thinking back to the first time I saw the Phantom Menace trailer when we were in basic training. When I first got first time I had back issues. Remember my feet? I had those feet issues.
Yep.
I was at the med bay and they played the trailer on the TV when it first released, and I remember telling you I saw a snippet. I don't know what I saw. Like it was amazing. Like, and we didn't actually get to watch the full trailer until that Christmas break. But I was always wondering, like, because yeah, it was that Christmas break we came back to your house and watched it at your place. Remember we downloaded it on
Yep.
cable modem. We had cable modem.
Yep.
That was amazing, 64K, and and watched it. We were like blown away. And so I was wondering, is this the same thing? But it certainly looked like Star Wars. There was puppets, real locations, lighting. Apparently there was acting in the trailer. That was amazing. People seemed to be acting. Like
I imagine that they went, you know what, let's take this really rough cut and dress it up, and we're going to use it in the trailer. Because honestly, when I actually got, when I watched Force Awakens trailer, I went back and I watched episode 1, 2, and 3 trailers. I watched them. And I was like, what the fuck? I really went like, what the fuck? What? Did I get excited about this? Because it's not, it doesn't, and I did. I remember getting excited about Phantom Menace trailer. I remember specifically going, oh my god, it's another Star Wars movie. But it didn't feel the same way.
Yeah,
I remember
when
when I
another
saw-
version of Star Wars, and we said, well,
Yeah,
since it's
yeah.
it's 50, 70 years before,
Put some pants
this
on,
is
or
a
shorts
different.
or something.
Yeah, it's a different world. It's Star Wars, but it's just a different era, right? Is how we sort of like rationalized it,
Yeah. I don't know, dude. I just, with Force Awakens, I think the biggest difference was, one, I wasn't actively going out and looking for whatever information I could get on the Force Awakens. I think the bigger thing was this. Lucas had just sold his IP. They announced they were making another Star Wars film. And I was like, oh, crap. Disney's going to make a Star Wars film. Like, well, it better be good. And I didn't want to go into it being angry that Lucas sold his IP. I wanted to go into it with the idea and the concept that Disney was going to do it justice. And so I saw all these people going, fuck Disney, they're going to fuck up Star Wars. And I thought, you know what, dude? You don't even know that. You don't know what they're going to do.
And quite frankly,
Stop.
we'd kind of already seen, lazy Star Wars anyway. And
Yeah.
outright bad Star Wars with the very first Clone Wars movie, the theatrical release with the Zorbo the Hutt or whatever. Like, I didn't even watch. I just watched snippets. Like I was like, really, So whatever. We've seen mediocre Star Wars. You can't get much worse than that. And,
Yeah, well, no, that's that. I think that's where that was born from. The
Well, I think people should understand too, if and since we've covered, our early years in terms of comics, the Turtles were the first. We like Star Wars, and then I'd say Batman was great, but Turtles was like the big thing for us. We were always into independent creations. That the fact that you could create something Like Star Wars was independently made. You can create something and be successful. Turtles, you can create something and be successful. Image Comics was a big deal to us. Todd McFarlane, Rob
Yep.
Liefeld, that you could create your own project and be successful. That's how we kind of always saw it. You know, we didn't see Star Wars as being like the main system, the corporate man. You know, it was this.
We didn't see it as a Disney IP. I just didn't. But I didn't want to. I didn't want to taint that idea because it's Star Wars, dude. I wanted to totally like be like, you know what? I love Mickey Mouse. I love Donald Duck. Give them a shot. And they didn't disappoint. They have not disappointed me yet.
All right, so the first trailer comes out, we love it. Second trailer comes out at D23, which I watched live from my job at the time because we had the Star Wars license again. And second trailer comes out, it's even better than the first for me, you know.
Yep.
And BB-8 rolls out. It's a real robot. We know the whole internet was like, the mic dropped, you know, boo, you know.
Yep. Exactly.
So, what were your thoughts on that trailer? Same?
When I saw the second trailer, I was like, then I did look up a few things. So it wasn't like I totally went in completely blind, but I wanted to know one thing. And I saw this article, and it was from Kevin Smith. And he talked about how J.J. Abrams had brought him over to Europe, flew him over there, and let him walk around on the sets.
The Millennium Falcon, specifically.
Yeah, the Millennium Falcon. And when I saw that, and I read that, and that's the only thing that I read, really, that was, like, important to me. When Kevin Smith said, you know, he walked on to the Millennium Falcon, and he was walking around the lots, and he saw all these physical sets, I knew right then and there that the movie was going to be good. Maybe not superiorly great, because I didn't want to get my hopes up, but I knew it was going to be good. Because the one thing that Hamill had always said during this whole event to make Force Awakens, and Ford had said, and Carrie Fisher had said, they all said the same thing, very similar. J.J. Abrams has taken Star Wars back to its roots. He's really, and Mark Hamill said of us, he said, you know, the one thing we did back in the 70s and 80s was we were physically there. We were really there. That's what J.J. Abrams did. He took it back to a physical, he uses the new effects, but he took it back to a physical world. And so for me, that was the clincher. I was like, you know what, J.J. Abrams, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. So, and
Right
that
there
was
with
why when I saw the second one, that's why I was like, awesome, this is a great film. How are they doing the effects? The second one made me question what they were doing. So,
and then the third trailer comes out, and I loved it so much, I'm like, no more trailers.
yeah, pretty much.
You know, I was like, I'm done. It's like, I'm 3 months out to this movie. I don't need to see shit. Got my tickets the night it came out online. Helped break the internet. Proud of that. Helped break.
Yeah.
I was like loving it. Every fucking movie site was shut down simultaneously. All 5 of them. Dude, it was fucking awesome. Did you buy your tickets in advance tonight, or did you just wait till after the hoopla? Yeah.
No.
So we all helped break the internet, right? Like.
Exactly. We bought 2 sets of tickets. My buddy Drew. Well, we bought 2 sets of tickets. One for Amarillo and one for here, just in case I was down in Amarillo at the time, because I was talking about going down to Texas to see Star Wars. So
I might be in Texas 3 months from now, so I'm gonna get tickets for there just in case. Like,
that's exactly what we did. So we bought tickets for down there and tickets for up here where I'm at, and yeah, for the 17th, night of the 17th.
There was a chance we could be in Boise right now, you know, and I didn't even think to do that. Like, I was like, well, I guess I'm out tickets. I'll just have to deal with it that weekend. We really got to do more podcasts together, Rich, because I'm not thinking clearly, obviously. Like, I'm missing that bad influence. I would have bought tickets to. I could just imagine my life. Really, you gonna buy tickets to Boise? You never know. If we're there, we don't want to miss it.
Like, where's the nearest theater to where we're gonna be in Boise? That's my first question. You know, when does Star Wars come out? Well, it comes out the 18th. Okay, where are we going to be at in Boise? Where's the nearest theater? That would have been my first question.
I wasn't stupid. I didn't get them for the 17th or 18th for a couple reasons. One, I freak out now, Rich, when I go to the theaters. Right? I'm sad to say I am the guy who plans an escape route right now. You know, because I go to these ever since the Dark Knight. Like, I'm always looking at the exits. you know. So like,
Well,
I don't
I
want to be
can
there.
tell you.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I understand that sentiment because honestly, when we were in the front row, on the right side of the front row, so on the right side of the theater, across from the exit, and I caught myself repeatedly looking down towards where the exit was, because I thought I saw somebody walking over there. So that's not just you, man. That's not just you.
And it's fucking horrendous. Like, I'm not
It's
joking.
annoying.
I'm not joking. Like, I don't think it's funny. You know, I don't mean to do it. I don't actually think about it now until I get there, and then I find myself constantly, you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
looking, is there a
I know
shadow
exactly
coming
what you
out?
mean.
Is there a flare, you know? Especially, you know, all our time in the military, we were trained for that sort of thing, and then I start thinking, you know, that shit doesn't go. They know how to program you, folks. Like, I try to tell you, they really, and I did security so long for my dad too. You know, like it's like, I just want to be an artist. I don't want to be fucking soldier Rob when I go to the theaters. You know, but that being said, I won't go opening night for a movie ever again because of until this shit stops. You know, or they find a better way to police theaters so it doesn't happen. Right now, I don't go opening night. I'm sorry. I'll go that weekend, but like in this case, I went on a Saturday at an odd time. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
I'm the furthest from the front exits, and I'm near a rear exit. You know, and I hate to think that
Oh, I know
that's
what you
how
mean.
I hate to think it, folks, but that's what I do. You know, as such, it made it
It's planning.
difficult. Go ahead. So as such, it made it difficult this week while I was drawing the Star Wars cover, coincidentally, to not pay attention to I couldn't look at the internet. I had to be very careful about reading comments when I would post updates because you know people would go, "Oh, I love that movie." Da 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 da. Kylo Ren at block. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, see, that's the thing. That's the one thing I try to avoid because I knew I was going to go see it on the 17th, and I thought, shit, if he's going on the 19th and I'm going on the 17th, I can't even talk to him about that shit because like I will drop the bomb, and I couldn't talk to like I took Chrissy on the 20th or on the 19th last night, and I couldn't talk to her. All I could say was, "You're not going to be disappointed in the film. It's actually really good. You'll enjoy it, I think." And so that's all I would tell anybody. I wouldn't tell them any details. There was actually a girl at the liquor store. She's kind of goth. She always dresses in like Jack the Pumpkin King shit, Nightmare Before Christmas. And she's like, "Yeah, I got my lightsabers and shit." She's like, "Don't tell me anything about the movie." I said, No. So let me tell you this. And she plugs her ears, and I'm like, "No, dude, it's just one thing. It's no spoiler."
I
don't. Yeah, that's what she did.
I even almost brought headphones with me to the theater, so I could just put loud music on. You know what I mean? Like while we're there, so I don't hear people in the hallways talking.
But
Like
I will say this though, when we came out, dude, like when we came out of the theater, right? It was like it was so fucking late. We went to the I think we went to the 8 o'clock showing. Yeah, we went to the 8 o'clock showing, and so
Hello?
it was like,
Nope.
Yeah.
Look, it did it again, man. Hold on, Ridge. All right, so now I know it's definitely something between OB and my headset. Maybe Skype.
cool.
I'll find out. You know, I don't ever have the option when Skype isn't on, so it might just be Skype is doing something. I think I'm gonna have to
Probably.
try instead of Skype from now on. I'm gonna try something else, like a Team Viewer or something, to get the thing in.
TeamViewer might work. It's a pretty good program. I use it a lot
So
when I'm helping people do IT stuff.
all right, so again, we're just rolling with it, folks. So the movie comes out this weekend. You see it before me. So why don't you go ahead and just start off with what you thought? Now, folks, from here on out, if you haven't seen The Force
Spoilers.
Awakens, the spoilers, just stop it. I'm gonna when I edit these together, I'm not gonna put one big 3-hour cut. I'll break it up into like 45 minutes or sections, depending on how we talk. But when you get to this part, just spoilers abound from here on out, folks. All right. So if you don't want to know, please get off, hang up now, come back later.
So I will say this. When we left the theater after the movie was over, I walked out and went, "Hey, holy crap. Darth Vader's Luke Skywalker's dead? That's freaking crazy." I was like, totally freaking crazy. Like, Hey, Lois, check it out. It was great, dude. And fucking my buddy Drew, he was just like, he was all laughing. It was great. Then people in line were like, "Oh, no spoilers!" I was like, "Yeah, Darth Vader's Luke Skywalker's son." Yeah. It was great though. But no, we got in there and we bought real 3D, real D glasses. They're really cool. Mine are Phasma glasses. I got Phasma glasses. They look like Phasma's helmet. Really cool. And so, bam, opening scroll, dude. The crawl. I was so freaking. I was just like, oh my god!
Crawl is
You know
perfect.
the crawl.
The
I
crawl is-
know it's awesome.
and having written like my own crawls before, I can tell you that's hard. Like,
Oh, it's amazingly. It's amazingly difficult. I've had to, in attempting to try and write my own Star Wars stuff every once in like back in the day before all my life took the turn it did. It's not an easy thing to write just the opening crawl because you have to know exactly what you want to say that doesn't give anything away but tells enough of the story to get you interested. So, and it did. It was like, holy crap, this is the real deal. And so here we are, and it was like, at first, I was thinking, like, you know, like, for me, this is my first thought sitting there in the theater. Like, this is fucking Star Wars. This is what it's about. There are other people who are like, this doesn't feel Star Wars. I'm like, that's what my thought was. Like, who is going, this doesn't feel Star Wars. Like, because I will school your ass and explain to you why this is Star Wars. That was my first thought. I was just like, oh my God. And so basically, up until I was so dumbfounded that I was watching a new Star Wars film. It was just, I was so elated to try and take it all in. Plus, we were sitting in shitty seats, so I was like, I had to look across the screen and back and forth. We were so close; it was just horrible. I'm glad we went and saw it a second time because there was stuff I missed.
I can tell
like
you, the opening battle was really great. The thing that, like, I mean, I just found myself giggling was when BB-8 goes across the desert. You know, he sees that, you know, he takes off to the desert, and there's this little puppet alien that pops up in the left-hand corner with
Yep.
red eyes. And I was like, ha ha, that's my shit. Like, that's my shit. That's the Muppets. Look at the Muppets right there. Like, you know, like, creepy little Muppety alien. You know, careful, he might eat
Yep.
you. You know, dangerous little fucking puppet like that.
Well, the first part, that part right there with that particular scene was great, but ultimately, I think the first scene where Poe Dameron shoots the blaster rifle and Kylo Ren just fucking stops it
Creepy,
and
right?
freezes him. No, I was like, holy fucking shit!
Yeah.
Like, they actually put that in the movie. Holy cow! They put it. Dude, and he's just like, I'm gonna hold this blaster fire here while I talk to you, and then after we go to walk away, it's gonna go where it needed to go, where you shot at. That first scene, I was just fully blown away. I was reeling from just that scene, from the next to the next scene to the next scene. Plus, you know, Daisy Ridley. You know, everybody, the comparison between her and Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman, phenomenal. I mean, just phenomenal who they got to play it, and she really does a good job with her character.
Well,
I think
going back to, you know, when we were doing the fan film thing, you know, I had just seen a movie, the Miyazaki film Mononoke. I hadn't known about Miyazaki before that. I've since become a Miyazaki master. But I remember watching Mononoke, and I remember saying, Star Wars needs to be more this, and
Yep.
Akira Kurosawa. It needs more Akira Kurosawa. It needs Mononoke. You know, then like the Queen Amidala, you know, Luke and Leia's mom or whatever, should have been a really strong, like an actual adventurer. You know what I mean? Like an actual you know, she doesn't have the Force, but she'll jump out and do shit. And to me, that's like when I see her in that dress, you know, garb, scavenging amongst the ruins and stuff. I mean, that's totally like Nausicaa. If you know what
Yep.
Nausicaa is, you
Yep.
know, it's her glider hanging around the ruins of the planet digging up shit. And I was like, this is totally Miyazaki. Like, she looks like Miyazaki. She's got a little speeder. She's fucking, you know, foraging for food. She lives in an AT-AT, you know, like it was it was very, it felt like you were there.
Yep.
verbatim. Like I was like, I'm clearly in the world of Star Wars.
No, that's the thing with the character development, and one thing that I really didn't like that they did with Finn was they didn't really flesh him out, but they really did a good job with Daisy Ridley, with Rey, to flesh out that character, even without too much dialogue. They did it visually and emotionally, fleshed her character out, and that was her home. We were there. That's where we were.
All right, so let's just jump right to the basic thoughts, and we can kind of, go around some finer points. So, overall, for me, if let's say 1 to 5, for me, the movie's a solid 4. Like for me, it's like A New Hope, Empire, and they can be, to me, like it's like New Hope's first, Empire's second, and sometimes that switches depending on what mood I'm in. Then The Force Awakens for me, then Jedi, and then the prequels. And I'll say Phantom Menace, Sith, and then Attack of the Clones is probably the least interested I'm in watching. So, for you, Rich, how would you overall rate it on 1 to 5, and then your favorite movies in order?
If I was gonna rate it 1 to 5, honestly, for a new Star Wars film under a new director with Lawrence Kasdan writing out the script, I gotta give it a 5, dude. It evoked the same emotional standpoints from me as every time I hear the music from Empire, when Luke's on the edge of that scaffolding in Empire, when they're on the catwalk and you start to hear Vader's music, it just like I get so excited and so scared, and I go back to being a kid again. That is where this movie put me. It put me
And
in
then
a
your
state.
favorite films in order?
In order, I would have to say A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, because I don't hold the same misgivings about Return of the Jedi as you. The original trilogy, by far, is in that order: A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Force Awakens, and I really just don't even want to talk about the prequels anymore because it's.
They were for they were an older age, right?
That's the thing about the prequels. Like when I look at this movie compared to the prequels, I can see where Lucas was trying to go and failed to do so, and I can see where Disney wants to go with it, and it's like absolutely fucking amazing. Because when Lucas sold his IP, I was kind of pissed, and then they said, okay, the EU is no longer canon. But they literally took. I mean, come on, dude. If you haven't read canon yet, or if you have, then you know that Ben Skywalker is Luke and Mara Jade's son. They took that name from that character. Jacen and Jaina are the Solo twins, two of them. The two Solo twins, and then you have Anakin Solo. What they did was they basically took canon from the EU, or for extended universe canon, and said, well, it's Star Wars. It belongs to us. Let's just fucking do it up. And they did it in such a way that it wasn't exactly the same shit. It was new and it was fun. So
I think we always knew though. Like when they say, the whole. Let's just really quickly deal with the legacy thing where they omitted the EU and rebooted it, because there's this whole group of people on the internet now who are like, making threats to Disney, since you took away our canon, we're gonna fucking spoil your film, which is bullshit. We always knew that this stuff wasn't really set in stone. In the same way that we all knew the Masters of Trukai didn't really take place, it just sort of takes place. Rebel Assault isn't real. It's just, like it's only real. The prequels have taught us it's only real until it's in the movie. You know what I mean? Like, period.
yeah.
Like that's it.
Well,
and anything outside the movie is fun. That's it.
all I gotta say is anybody who actually thought the Thrawn trilogy would get written was deluded, because honestly, while they're really, 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 really fucking good, and they were always considered 7, 8, 9, they're so huge. Like those, you could not do those books in 3 movies. It's impossible.
And
Absolutely
they're structured more
impossible.
like a TV show than a film. You know, when you think about the way
Exactly.
novels are set up and these skirmishes that require, you know, inner dialogue and trekking across distances and
Well,
you know
how do you make a character that's as cool as Thrawn?
that you can do. You can do that opening setup.
Well,
You can
yeah,
set that
but
up. It's Sherlock
it,
Holmes, dude. You know, you can do a Sherlock
it's
Holmes
hard to
movie.
flesh that out, though. It's hard to flesh that out. I mean,
But
in a trilogy, you could do it because
here's the
they
thing.
did it with.
I still think Thrawn can exist. Just it'll be Thrawn as in the EU trilogy or the new trilogy versus the older. They can. They haven't said they won't. They own those characters. Disney
Yep.
and Lucasfilm, they still own Thrawn. Thrawn can come back. You know, they cast Benicio del Toro in this episode 8. He could be Thrawn. Anyone could be. You know, Thrawn could come back in one of the shows in some way. They know. What
And it
the
did it
fuck
again.
is going on with my sound, dude? I cannot for the life of me figure out sound. Hello? Test.
Hello, testing 1 2.
Dealing with it. I think it's Skype that's causing the problem. Because what it does is, like when it starts back up, I can see the mic thing. But I don't know. I'll figure it out later. So let's get back to it. So Thrawn could come back. You know, whatever. That all
Well,
being
any of
said,
the extended universe stuff can come back. That's the one thing that I was like trying to get people to understand. That's all Disney's property. All those books, all the Rogue. That's why they're making a fucking Rogue Squadron movie. I mean, come on, dude.
Rogue One.
It's all theirs.
Yeah. But so let's get okay. So the Force Awakens, you say 5 out of 5. Now, okay. Let's say your favorite thing and then your least favorite overall. It doesn't have to be a scene. It could just be something about it. You know, because with good comes bad. There's always something that you're like, I don't know about that. Even episode 4.
Okay, so my favorite thing about the film, honestly, and it's not a particular scene. I mean, I do. Okay, I want to give a couple of those because one of my favorite things is when Finn has the lightsaber and he goes out and it's the and he's got to fight the stormtrooper that has the baton. That was awesome to show them actually. You know, a stormtrooper is trained in martial combat, so they could theoretically use a lightsaber without hurting themselves.
And if
They
there's
couldn't
and
use
if
it
they're
like a Jedi.
and the crawl said they were hunting Jedi down.
Yep.
So
and they were
would
trained to hunt Jedi.
They'd be trained, you know.
So that scene right there is just awesome to me. I know he gets his ass kicked, but that's the best part because it's like, dude, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He's not even a really good stormtrooper, but he can hit shit. But
he's
that's
a janitor.
Yeah, he's a fucking janitor, and he's trying to fight a guy with a lightsaber that he's never used before, and this guy's kicking his ass.
Right.
That scene I like really well. But the one thing that I really do love about the movie, is when you look at the film from beginning to end, you can see, if you know what you're looking for, the application of of old school and practical special effects versus CG. And they are almost flawless. The blending, the meshing of the two is what made the film feel so much like Star Wars should feel.
I
And
want to
that's
note too, on that note, you know, we talk a lot about the prequels. One of the things people notice about the prequels are ships that land all the time. There's that slow land. In this movie, it seems every time a ship lands, it's crashing into something.
Yeah, pretty much.
Boom, fall, whoa, boom. Like no one's just ships just fucking flying into shit all.
Like the opening scene with the Falcon, dragging it on the fucking ground.
Yeah, the only two people who can land a ship properly in this movie are Poe and Chewie. Like, you know?
That's it. Yep.
I'm with you. I think the thing that I love the most about the film is, again, not just, I won't say that the blending is perfect because there's one character, the Snoke stuff doesn't quite work for me.
We can talk about that
We'll
in a
get that in a
minute.
second. But what I'll say is, I love the multitude of it. I love the puppets are next to the CG characters. I love that the film does what I always wanted from Star Wars, which it takes them back to their medieval, you know, Western samurai roots. So,
Yep.
like, spoilers again, you know, like when they go get Luke's lightsaber, she doesn't find it in this techno-looking case that you would see like in Episode 1, right, with grooves and rivets, and it looks kind of techno. She finds it in a treasure chest in a crypt. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
and she just goes into a vision, and they don't even explain to you at that point.
They don't explain to you shit. You just have to kind of guess what's going on.
Yeah, and
But,
as you would experience the Force, right? Like that was
Yep.
you're experiencing it with her. That I love. I love when like when they're in the interrogation sets. That shit really looks bad. Like it looks like you don't want to be there in those things. You
yeah,
know?
yep.
Versus say like Obi-Wan in Attack of the Clones where he's just hovering with glow bracelets. You know what I mean? Like who cares? You know, like
The one thing that I hated about the film, I actually found myself going, wow, I didn't like this portion of it. There is a section in the beginning of the film that was pointless. It was literally when there was a bit of, it's almost like they didn't sequence it right, or they sequenced it and it's too long. They didn't edit enough of it. The first part of the film kind of drags.
I disagree. I almost feel like, and I'll get to what I didn't like. What I feel like, the thing that I think kind of is, I think they use a little too much exposition sometimes. They explain to you, this is Solo's kid, this is and they say it repeated over and over again in a way that like you don't need to be told over and over again. These
I
things.
think the reason why I think they did that is because there are not a lot of people. I mean, there's a huge fandom. Okay, Star Wars is part of my DNA. I don't know about you, but it's part of my DNA. So I know Solo had twins, and he had a son. Not everybody knows that. You know, there are some kids that are like they're oblivious to that. Some people don't know. Older folks don't even know. People who grew up with Star Wars. So I think that's why they reiterated a lot of that stupid stuff. But I get your point, though.
It is a little too much talky because you see it like, and I'm thinking like the way it plays out, you could omit a few of those things here and there, and you achieve the same result. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
you don't have to. You don't have to beat it like a dead horse. It's
and I feel like
that's
there's a little too much of that. The other thing I feel is that I feel like they could have taken some of that stuff out and then used maybe an extra 10 minutes to slow down some of the scenes, like pad it
Yep.
out a little bit more, so you get more of the experience of being in the universe a little bit more and less moving on to the next beat. You know what I mean? Like just a
Yeah.
little bit slower. Maybe when they go to Maz Kanata's place, they could spend a little bit more time in getting right to the meat. You know what I mean? Maybe like they're exploring maybe Solo says, I'm gonna find Maz, you guys hang around, and they have some experiences, and she finds that crypt and ignores it and then comes back or something like that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, that's something that bothered me. One thing that really bothered me about the film, and I know a lot of people are talking about this because it's all over the internet. Okay, Finn, he's a black dude. I get it. People are like, "Oh, it's a black main character." I thought that was cool. I'm not like, "Oh, we need to have more black people in film." I think it was a cool thing.
well,
But
he's a great actor. I like him. You know, he was in
The
Attack of
problem
the
that I
Block.
have, well, yeah, but the problem that I have with that character is they didn't do anything with him. They threw him in the film, and they are the ones who propagated that or caused the propagation of the. Well, we just needed a black actor in the film.
No, that I
to
think they
make
wrote the
it even.
character and cast him because he was in that movie Attack the Block. Like if have you seen Attack the Block?
Attack the Block.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so that came out around the same time as Super 8. And it's basically a movie about some aliens. Like, imagine aliens similar to like Alien and Pitch Black kind of crash in urban England, London, right?
Okay.
Urban London. And John Boyega, Finn, is the leader of these group of thugs. And they rob a chick, you know, like they're thugs. They're just British little street hooligans. And they decide to go kill these fucking aliens. You know what I mean? They get a sword and they fucking. It's like this mean. It feels like an '80s Lost Boys, Goonies kind of film.
Okay.
You know, and
Well,
it's got some mean elements to it too. You know, it's got danger, and they cast him because he's strong in that regard. I feel that again, you could have taken those 10 minutes and just like okay, maybe when he's in the desert, you know what I mean? Like you get to spend more time where he's looking up at the stars and he's just like fuck, you know, what do I do? Or because there's just slow parts.
well, that's what I'm saying, dude. Like, that's what I'm saying. They didn't flesh that particular character out enough for my taste. I would have liked to have seen more, but I'm sure he's going to be in the second film or the next film.
But
so.
you wanted to see more, right?
I did want to
That's
see
the best
more.
part, right? Because we didn't
Yeah.
care whether we saw. I mean, we knew we were seeing more Star Wars. Like, oh, we'll get to it. We get to it. Now it's like, I want to see more. I want to see more of this dude. I want to see more of these guys. Like, they made you want more. You know, like
Well, if anybody can sit there and go, okay, I've been reprogrammed since birth to just kill, on directive, kill, but I decided my first battle to turn away from it, that's a pretty special character. That's pretty special. There's something at work there. Whether or not he's Force sensitive is irrelevant. I
And
want to
that's
know.
the thing I love this movie did is it went back and it. I'm not saying it undid the whole episode 1 thing,
Midichlorian shit,
but it
you mean?
went back to the
Yeah.
fact that anyone can use the Force if they're in tune with it and you know what I mean? Some are a little bit more adept than others. You know what I mean? But there is a
You
will
mean
of the
they took
Force.
the bullshit science out of it? Because honestly, Star Wars is not like Star Trek. It's not all about the science. It's about the myth.
It's fantasy, space fantasy.
Behind it's fantasy.
Hence the
It's about the myth
castles
behind it.
and the crossguard sword and the
Yeah.
treasure chests. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, I know.
and
It's not about midichlorians. It's about this mystic thing that you feel when it's.
And so
Ugh.
when I'm first watching the movie, you start thinking, well, this is a lot of coincidental. This guy just happened to be here. This happened to be here. And I'm like, well, it's the will of the Force. And if they're listening to the Force, they're gonna, you know what I mean? These things will be there if they pay attention. And you know what I mean? And they actually decide to do, because, you know, boy, you know, Finn can start this back.
That's okay.
Because I never once had this problem with Google Hangouts. Because this is gonna, this was supposed to be an easy recording, Rich, and I'm now gonna have to edit the shit out of this together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
Which is what I
I know.
did not want to do. So, folks, I might be going back to Google Hangouts after this because this is ridiculous. Ooh, turn that back on. So, anyways, it brought back the will of the Force that if you pay attention, you could learn.
Yep.
You know, and I just, as we all thought when we were kids, you know, like anyone could do this, you know, if they were committed and willing to suffer, you know, painfully.
Well, you know, it wasn't so much just. It really brought back the mysticism behind it, and the reason why Obi-Wan died on the first Death Star was this mystic stuff out there. This stuff, the glue that held the galaxy together. That's what it is. It's, you know, it's like Higgs and Boson. It's the same thing. It's there. It's instead of being a midichlorian thing, it's this mystical thing that anybody who devotes enough effort to can be part of, and that's what was cool about it. I really think. But yeah, like I said, I didn't like the fact that they didn't flesh out Finn's character. I feel enough in the first film, but there was a lot of characters to work with, and you know.
She loves to sing, huh, Rich?
Yes, she does. She
knows she has an audience somewhere. That's what that is. So, yeah, I think for me, the thing that definitely, though, I just don't think they knew what they were going to do with it was the whole R2-D2 thing. Like, I just felt like they could have kept R2 with Luke. Or
You know what's cool, dude? Chrissy gave me a really cool theory about that, actually, after I took and saw it, dude. She said, okay, so the reason why R2 was there was Luke, when Kylo Ren destroyed the Order, the Jedi Order, and Luke dropped R2 off, basically, to go find his own path, to refine his path. And I think that he's on Tython, by the way. That's my theory. But Chrissy said R2 always had that data in there, but he didn't know it, and they didn't know. But the whole time he was in powered down mode, he was literally searching and trying to piece together this information that he got from, like, the first Death Star and from all the times that he's had information downloaded. So the reason why he was just sitting there and they didn't use him was he was just gathering data, trying to find this map that they needed, the whole map. So I was like, well, okay, and so why did he just come on then? He was like, well, he finally compiled that data and found what they were looking for. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I just think all you really needed was, you know what I mean? Like, it could have been like BB-8 had the map, but we can't get to it right now because they nuked Coruscant. Now, I want to know, did they nuke Coruscant?
Yes, they did. They did. They killed it.
Because I was like
blew
telling
it up.
Brandon last night when I was driving back home, I think they nuked Coruscant. You know, they didn't
Yeah, they
really
did.
clarify that as well as...
Actually, they destroyed Coruscant, and they destroyed 4 of the surrounding planets in that system.
So we never have to see a Senate hearing it ever again,
Nope.
right?
No, we don't. No.
like we're just making certain we never have to go back there, which is kind of weird because I always wanted to see the Galactic Senate, since we first read the Alan Dean Foster novel. Like that'll be cool.
You know what kills me about J.J. Abrams, dude? It's like, okay, so here's I'm going back to the Star Trek franchise because I love it. He's like, you know what? I'm killing off Vulcan. Fuck it. I'm just gonna
You're never gonna have to worry about going back to that planet, like.
So all these Star Trek fans are like, oh my god, you can't do that. He changed the fucking timeline completely by doing that. What Abrams just did is changed everything in Star Wars. He just destroyed the center of the galaxy, the civilized galaxy. He destroyed the 5 most closest planets to that, or the 4 most closest planets to that. They're gone. They're completely fucking gone.
I almost feel like it almost should have started on blowing up the Republic.
I know,
you know what I mean? Like
come on, dude.
So the remnants
Star
are the
Killer
resistance,
Base,
like
Star Killer Base.
Oh,
dude.
I know,
Come on,
I know.
It's a fucking Sun Crusher, dude. It's a fucking Sun Crusher. It's
Dark
the same
Empire
concept.
shit right there, right? Like so.
That is.
Yeah.
That is. That's awesome, though. I thought it was great, actually.
Yeah, but I was like, we never have to sit through Dello Feligates for certain now.
Well, Dello Feligates.
Right, we don't.
Yeah, no thing.
Oh, dude, it's gonna be.
No, he's dead, dude. He just killed Jar Jar Binks. You know that, right?
He's
gone.
So yeah, the other 4 planets were Naboo, like all the prequel planets. Naboo.
Yeah, pretty much.
Camino, So, and then lastly, concerning the Force Awakens, I want to talk about 2 things that I think. Look, we love it. We're not. I don't think it's perfect. You don't think it's perfect. We do love it. 2 things that I thought were a little off for me. You might disagree with one of these, so we'll get to that last. The next thing would be Snoke. I don't think needed to be in the film at all. Like.
Oh wait. You mean balls?
Yeah. I like Andy Serkis, and one day.
Oh man.
One day we're gonna get Luke versus Snoke.
He looked like fucking Gollum, dude. It was horrible. That's the only like. Okay, he didn't look exactly like Gollum, but really, dude, why do we need to show him? That's just one more character that they didn't need to show. They should have brought him in. They could have done the whole. This is just a cloaked figure type of shit. But they, it's not that I thought that was bad. I thought it was cool, but at the same time, I saw some of Gollum in that CG right there. I did. I really did. I actually saw a lot of Gollum in that CG. So. But it was really cool acting. Voice acting was great. I thought it was an awesome character, really.
Where's the mermaid?
Did. I actually saw a lot of Gollum in that CG. So. But it was really cool acting. Voice acting was great. I thought it was an awesome character, really.
Where's the mermaid? Look at this, Daddy.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I just think it's just, it'll end up being. My theory is it's going to be Rey versus, Kylo, and then Luke versus Snoke. You know what I mean? And we'll see that actual Jedi Master Sith battle we imagined. Because Rian Johnson, the director of Looper, writer of Looper, Brothers Bloom, Brick. If you haven't seen Brick, Rich, I really recommend you see that. He's writing and directing Episode 8. I'm telling you, Rich, I didn't think I could be more excited for a Star Wars film. I mean, have you seen Looper? Rian Johnson is a phenomenal writer and director. He knows how to do big scale stuff and character shit, Yeah. He gets it. And he's going to, whatever is laid down here, he'll just build off it properly, So I'm really looking forward to that. The other thing I thought that, isn't bad, just, I don't know, it didn't quite pan out the way I wanted it to, was the John Williams music. It was okay. I never thought I would think. Remember when Shadows of the Empire came out? It had a soundtrack, and we would listen to it. And you listen to it, and you go, "Well, okay, I know the parts that are John Williams. I know the parts that are Joel McCreely. McCreely or McNeely?
McNeely.
But it's not quite Star Wars. I still feel Shadows of the Empire had more themes running through it than this. You know what I mean?
Nope.
Like original themes, lyrical.
I don't actually agree with that. I don't actually agree with that assessment because honestly, the first thing I was going to tell you on the 17th was, dude, you're going to love the music. Because honestly, dude, the way that Williams weaved. Okay, just as an example, and if you get a chance to go see it again anytime soon, pay attention
Yeah, I'll
to
go
this.
see it again.
There is a scene where they're all going to get ready to attack, and it's got all the ships, and they're getting ready. The music itself was very, very military, but it was weaved in the Star Wars theme, and I could hear where Williams was weaving the original trilogy music, the Leia theme, the love theme, the Luke Skywalker theme, the Star Wars theme, the Imperial March theme, all into this new soundtrack. And honestly, dude, I really actually enjoyed the music in this movie.
I
That
didn't
was
think it
the
was
one
bad.
thing that I did.
I'm just saying it felt more prequel and Harry Potter than Star Wars to me.
It didn't feel like, no, because in the prequel, dude, it feels so empty.
Well, I went and
This
bought
did
the
not.
soundtrack and did listen to it 3 times last night, and there is a lot of that dun 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 dun. He started doing that in the prequels with this like when immediate things are happening, it almost feels like the music does a stutter thing, like dun 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 dun. And the difference being in this film is they actually show shit going on when he does that. In the prequels, it would just be like Hayden Christensen like jogging. Like, all right, I mean, that's some big music for jogging, bro. Like this time,
That
fuck,
It died.
dude.
If you want to wrap this up, that's.
Yeah, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna do some tests this week and figure out what's causing this exact problem.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what was I talking about? Fuck.
Musical score. Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
dun.
So I went back and listened to it, and then I go and listen to Michael Giacchino, who scored almost every one of JJ's movies. I think he's in all of his movies, from Mission Impossible 3, Super 8. He did
Yep.
the Star Trek scores. He did Jurassic World recently. He did the Jurassic World score. Rich, you know him originally because I had that demo for a game called Medal of Honor for the PSX. Way
Yep.
back when we were in the Army, I was like, you gotta listen to music. And I bought the soundtrack direct from the DreamWorks site. Remember that? And we would listen to it like,
Yep.
this is fucking amazing. And so obviously, if Williams wasn't available, Giacchino would have been the guy to do it. He's in the movie as one of the troopers, by the way, if you look in the credits. Like, 'cause I
Yep.
stayed and looked at the credits, and Giacchino is in there as one of the troopers. Wow. So, I'm not saying if John Williams wants to come back, don't bring him back. I would never say that. I just feel like, well, maybe he's just getting older. I don't know. Like,
You know what, dude? It would have been nice to, not to say that John Williams couldn't do it, but it would have been nice to have a new set of, I guess, ears on the project. Would have been cool. I'm
Yeah, I
not
mean,
saying
it's
Williams
gonna
couldn't
happen
do it
anyway.
or collaborate.
it's going to
But
happen.
eventually Luke, or he's gonna die, or he's gonna just be like, dude, I'm done enough Star Wars in my lifetime, dude. Please, can I just get on with my fucking life? Let's get Danny Elfman,
Now get Michael Giacchino, dude. Like the Star Trek scores and Jurassic World scores are really good, man.
Yeah, they are.
So
They are, and
Incredibles, he did Incredibles. Giacchino,
Yeah.
I mean, he's the heir to the throne, as far as I'm concerned. So, but that being said, so now we're at the Force Awakens. It's fucking kicking ass. Everyone's happy. And in 18 months, we're getting 2 new Star Wars films. We're going to wrap this up, Rich. 2 new Star Wars films come out in the next 18 months. Rogue One, the prequel we maybe should have got, in a way, a non-Jedi filled war movie, how they got the Death Star plans. I imagine Vader will probably make an appearance and just be scary as shit. You know what I mean?
which is awesome as shit.
Yeah, I can't wait. And we're going to get a new composer, so we're definitely going to get some new Star Wars music in a different vein. That's 12 months from now. Totally looking forward to Rogue One. It's got Wash from fucking Firefly is in it. A lot of people are going to be in it, dude. It's going to be the original era trilogy. I'm really excited for that, actually, in a way that I didn't think I would be. But that's going to be amazing. And then Episode 8 after that, 6 months after Rogue One, Episode 8.
I can't wait, really. I can't
18
wait.
months.
That's just...
Two
It's
Star
gonna be
Wars
friggin'
movies.
Star Wars overload.
Yeah. So, and I'll have, we'll definitely be on, you know, as long as you stay alive, brother, you fucking keep living. Then,
Yeah, I'll try not to
you know,
die.
try not to die. Yeah, you have way too many adventures. Have less adventures. Okay. So, you have any final thoughts you want to wrap up on the future, Rich? Like things you want to see, things you think, you know, like
Okay.
concerning.
I would like to see some semblance of the Thrawn trilogy happen. Maybe not with Luke, Leia, and Han, obviously, because, well, you know, spoiler, Han dies. But, you know, I could definitely see Finn and Rey and the new generation of Star Wars main characters. I could see them doing something with a Thrawn trilogy or something they're in. You know, it'd be nice to pay homage to all of the Star Wars fandom that has ever been, for them to really take a look at the EU and find just really good stories, because there are a lot of good ones. There are a lot of bad ones, but there are a lot of good ones. And I will say this: I was severely pissed off when Lucas sold his IP. I was angry, but I'm glad that Disney took it over, and I'm glad to see what they're doing, and I'm glad that they literally went fucking gloves off with Force Awakens. If you haven't seen it, go see it. If you have seen it, see it again. We want to hit that like world marker for most most money made ever. And I look forward to seeing where the Force takes us, dude, because so far it's pretty freaking awesome.
How does she feel about it?
How do you feel about Star Wars? How do you feel about Star Wars? Tell me. 2 thumbs up?
Yes.
Okay, we got a 2 thumbs up. Who's your favorite Star Wars character?
Everyone.
Everyone? She likes them all. Seriously?
Got a little McCollum right there. That's
Yeah.
I hope, the one thing I want to see is I hope that Luke versus Snoke becomes something that is not Luke bouncing off the walls with a lightsaber doing giant.
What if Snoke's like really as big as Yoda?
Oh, they just project him because he's actually really small.
Yeah, he's like a giant projection, but he's like really like 3 feet tall.
Well, if he is, again, this is spoilers, folks, possible for, I don't know. But if he is, you know, the fans think he might be Plagueis and the race of creatures that Plagueis was. If he is, he's supposed to be 7 to 8 feet tall. You know? So.
Yep.
What I do like,
There
though,
is
is
the rumor
Snoke,
that it's Dark Plagueis.
I do like that Snoke was being projected as a hologram in a cave that felt like what they had described the Emperor would be in originally in Return of the Jedi.
Yep.
Just this dark,
Yeah.
dingy cave. And I want to keep going back to dirty, old caves on Skellig Island. You know what I mean? Like, I want filth and grime.
Dude, bring back the fucking swashbuckling, because it's time to get Star Wars on this ass.
Yeah,
Swashbuckling.
I don't want to
dude.
see more Chewie kicking ass. I think my favorite scene in the movie, and I have a lot of favorite scenes, but I actually just like it when Han's dead. Chewie just like dead. Everyone
The rage
dies.
of the
Yeah, everyone dies and he blows the place up. He doesn't even think. You know what I mean? Like,
No, dude. You know, I gotta give credit, and before we take off here, I gotta give credit to Peter Mayhew. The emotion that he showed just in his eyes when Han goes down is like, it is phenomenal.
Well, I would like to know
I-
what scenes
I
he was
felt
actually
that.
in. I thought the only scene he was in was in the sitting down because he can't walk. You know, so I don't know what scenes he was in. I will say Chewbacca looked like Chewbacca, not like Episode 3 Chewbacca. You know, so
Yeah.
and he looked and
didn't look
acted
right.
like Chewbacca, like when he was pining for affection. You know, you know. Yeah, he did a great job. All right, Rich, it's been really great. This has been quite the adventure to record this crazy cast. I'm going to take all the real time down, folk, and I'm going to cut this back up in a way that it'll miss all these breaks. And I'll probably put a little picture up in here and post and everything so I can put up some of the stuff we talk about. So I'll re-release this, Rich, over the next week, probably, you know, since this did not go as smoothly as I had planned.
You mean there are friggin' people actually watching?
They will. They actually will. They will watch. It's quite amazing. But I do want to say thank you for taking the time to come on and talk about our history with Star Wars. You know, like I never knew where I was gonna ever put this shit in my life. Like, I gotta put this stuff down somewhere, and I'm not writing a fucking journal. So, this is about it, folks. This is about it. But this is the dude that helped grow up with Star Wars with me, and my art wouldn't be where it is. When you look at the Star Wars retro cover I did, 9 out of 10 of those games, if there's 10 games, 9 of them, you and I grew up playing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, it was just reliving through all our memories. Rogue Squadron, Shadows of the Empire, Battle for Naboo, X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. And then all the ones I couldn't put in, like Full Throttle, which have Star Wars references. All the Final Fantasy games have Star Wars references, and everything else. So, just want to say thanks for being there, man. I hope, like, moving forward, you remain healthy. You know what I mean? I want to have you back on the cast whenever I can. We could talk about, if you're watching shows and stuff, we'll have you on to talk about some stuff. Could do some of your voices and everything, dude. Pretty talented guy. One of the most talented dudes I ever met, man. You deserve more credit than you've gotten. So let's not disappear, right?
Yep. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
All right.
Appreciate it.
That's it, folks. Where can anyone find you? Are you anywhere on the internet, Rich? You hanging out anywhere? Can anyone find you? Want to know more about you?
Well, on the internet, yeah, I'm. I don't know if anybody plays it, but there's a reiteration. It's an emulator of Star Wars Galaxies, and I play that right now since I'm basically kind of disabled. And I'm on there. It's SWG Reborn. So I don't know if any of your fans or anybody that watches actually plays, but you can play Star Wars there. It's a cool game.
Keeping
it's
it alive, right?
Keeping it alive, man. The Force is strong with this one. And I don't know, dude. I kind of had to disappear for a little bit, and I explained to you that whole situation. But I'm gonna come back with a vengeance. I think I'm gonna get into some voice acting stuff, and like I told you, I'm gonna be out there. I'm gonna be out there. It's just taking me a little bit longer than I wanted to get there.
Perfect. As always, folks, you can find me here on the channel. Subscribe to the channel at Twitter at Sketchcraft, on Instagram at Sketchcraft, or directly at Facebook at Sketchcraft.com. Don't forget, folks, Sketchcraft is recorded in front of a live internet audience, obviously, warts and all, fully supported by viewers like you. Please leave your comments and the feedback below, and we'll see you on the next Sketchcraft. Sketchcraft.
Sexcraft!
No, we don't do that. I'm editing that out. All right, see y'all later, folks.